When a woman wants an older man, she tests him with these two questions: psychology tricks. Welcome to our channel. It's Stoicism Win, where you find interesting and useful knowledge from the Stoic philosophers to lead a happy and good life. As Epictetus reminds us, first learn the meaning of what you say and then speak. In love, that wisdom goes even deeper. Learn the meaning of what is not said as well. Have you ever had the feeling that a woman was drawn to you, yet she never came right out and said it? For many older men, this is exactly how attraction begins. It does not always arrive through obvious flirting or dramatic signals. More often, it comes quietly: a look that lingers a little longer, a question that seems casual but is not casual at all, a moment that feels small on the surface yet carries real meaning underneath. When a woman is interested in a mature man, she often behaves differently. She does not always want to appear too eager. She does not want to look impulsive or emotionally exposed. So instead of chasing, she watches. Instead of confessing, she tests. And instead of revealing her feelings directly, she asks simple questions that help her understand who you really are. That is where many men miss the moment. They hear the words, but not the intention behind them. They answer too fast, too proudly, or too carelessly. They think they are in an ordinary conversation, when in truth, they are standing in front of a quiet, emotional doorway. The woman is not merely asking for information. She is trying to discover your character. She wants to know whether your strength is real, whether your calm is genuine, and whether your presence is something she can trust. A younger man may try to impress her with noise. An older man attracts her through steadiness. That is the difference. Women who are drawn to maturity are often not looking for the loudest man in the room. They are looking for the one who knows who he is without needing to prove it every second. And these two questions become her quiet way of finding out whether you are that man. If you understand what is happening beneath the surface, you do not need to force attraction. You do not need to perform. You do not need to chase. Your awareness itself becomes attractive. Your ability to read the moment, remain composed, and respond with depth makes you stand out naturally. But if you miss the meaning behind those small tests, the opportunity can disappear just as quietly as it appeared. You may walk away thinking nothing happened, while she walks away thinking you were not as emotionally aware as she hoped. And that is how many men lose a meaningful chance without ever realizing it was there. 1. She's not asking for information, she's reading your life. A man who builds a life he enjoys will never need to chase attention. Attention will naturally find him. When a woman asks you, "What do you usually do in your free time?" don't be fooled by how simple it sounds, because this is not a casual question. It is one of those subtle psychology tricks rooted deeply in female psychology, and what she is really doing is quietly studying your lifestyle, your mindset, and your sense of self without ever saying it directly. That is how female psychology works: calm on the surface, but always observing beneath. And you must understand this if you truly want to master how to fall in love in a mature, grounded way. Because your answer is not just information, it is a reflection of your identity, your habits, and your emotional independence. Don't answer like a man who is waiting for life to happen. Don't say, "I don't do much, I just wait until someone calls me," because that signals that your world is empty without others filling it. And that is something a perceptive woman will immediately notice. Instead, be the man who has rhythm in his life, who moves with purpose, who values his own time. Because when you say something like, "I like to read, I stay active, and I spend time alone to think and reset," you are quietly showing depth, discipline, and peace. And that is what truly stands out. Be clear about this. She is not testing your hobbies. She is testing your relationship with yourself. That is the core of these psychology tricks. A man who enjoys his own company is a man who is not easily shaken, not easily controlled by attention, and not easily lost in a relationship. And in female psychology, that kind of man feels safe, stable, and intriguing at the same time. You must understand, this is not about impressing her with fancy activities or trying too hard to sound interesting. That is not the point. The point is to show that your life already has meaning, already has structure, already has direction, with or without her presence. That is how to fall in love the right way, not by chasing validation, but by standing firmly in your own world and allowing connection to grow naturally. Don't perform. Be real. Be grounded. That is where your strength is. And here is something most men miss. Silence speaks louder than exaggeration. So you don't need to list 10 different things to sound valuable. You just need to communicate calmly that you have standards for your time, that you invest in yourself, that you don't waste your days waiting for excitement to appear. That is what makes her pause. That is what makes her think. Because through this one simple question, she is asking herself, does this man have a life I can respect? And more importantly, is he someone who will add to my life, not depend on it? These are the hidden layers behind simple conversations, the quiet psychology tricks that shape attraction without noise or drama. So, next time you hear that question, don't rush, don't downplay yourself, don't shrink your life to sound humble. Stand in your truth, speak with calm confidence. Let your answer reflect a man who is already whole, already moving forward, already at peace. Because in the end, mastering female psychology and understanding these psychology tricks is not about changing who you are. It is about revealing the strength that is already there. And that is the foundation of how to fall in love in a way that is real, steady, and lasting. 2. Questions about your past test your emotional maturity. She may ask, why did your last relationship end? And on the surface, it sounds simple, almost polite, like casual conversation over coffee. But don't be fooled. This is not curiosity. This is a test, a quiet, precise test of your emotional maturity, your self awareness, and the way you carry your past into the present. And this is where many men reveal more than they intend. They rush, they defend, they blame. They say, she was difficult, or it just didn't work out because of her. Stop right there. Don't do that. That is not strength. That is not what a high value man communicates. A man who wants to attract women, and not just any women, but the right ones, must understand this. How you speak about your past is how you prove your growth. Be calm, be grounded, be honest without being bitter. That is masculine energy. When you say something like, we grew apart, but I learned a lot from it, you are not just answering a question. You are telling a story about who you are now. You are showing that you can reflect, that you can take responsibility, that you can grow without carrying resentment like a heavy coat you refuse to take off. And that matters more than you think. Because a woman who is considering an older man is not just looking for experience. She is looking for wisdom. She is asking herself, does this man repeat patterns, or has he risen above them? Understand this clearly. Your past is not the problem. Your relationship with your past is the test. You must own it, not glorify it, not deny it. Own it. That is what separates a high value man from someone who is still reacting instead of leading. And when you own it, you create trust, you create safety, you create the kind of presence that naturally attracts women without effort or performance. Because real masculine energy does not argue, does not complain, does not seek validation. It stands firm in truth. Don't overshare. Don't turn it into a long emotional speech. Be sharp, be clear, be composed. Short sentences, calm tone, direct eye contact. That is power. That is control. And more importantly, that is emotional discipline. Because what she is really asking is not about your ex. She is asking, how will you handle me when things get difficult? And your answer, whether you realize it or not, tells her everything. So don't fall into the trap of blaming. Don't paint yourself as the victim of every story. That signals unfinished business. That signals a man still stuck. Instead, show her you've moved forward. Show her you've taken lessons, not scars. That is the difference. A high value man doesn't carry the past as baggage, he carries it as wisdom. And that wisdom is what makes him steady, attractive, and deeply respected. Be the man who can say, it ended, and that's okay. I learned, I grew, I became better. That is confidence without noise. That is masculine energy without force. And that is exactly the kind of presence that continues to attract women, naturally, consistently, and without chasing. 3. She asks about your goals to see your direction. When a woman looks at you and calmly asks, what are you working toward right now? Understand this clearly. She is not making small talk. She is measuring your direction, your discipline, your future. She is trying to feel whether you are a man who moves with intention or a man who drifts. And drifting is never attractive, not in today's fast moving world and not in any time in history. Because, as Seneca once said, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. That is the core truth you must carry. Direction is power. Direction is presence. Direction is masculine certainty. When you say, I'm just going with the flow, you are unconsciously telling her you have handed your life over to chance, that you react instead of lead, that you exist instead of build, and that quietly erodes attraction. But when you respond with clarity, I'm building financial stability, I'm creating a life that means something, I'm improving myself every day, you signal something deeper than words. You show structure, you show vision, you show an iron mind. This is where old Stoic wisdom becomes your advantage, because a man grounded in purpose does not chase validation, he creates value. He does not wait for opportunity, he prepares for it. He does not speak in vague hopes, he acts in defined goals. And women feel this difference instantly. In modern life, where distractions are endless and most people are scattered, a focused man stands out without trying. He becomes rare. He becomes magnetic. He becomes a natural leader in his own life. And that is exactly what Stoicism win is about. Winning by mastering yourself first, by building a life so structured and intentional that others naturally respect it. Do not misunderstand this. She is not asking you to impress her with big dreams or unrealistic ambitions. She is asking if you are committed to something real, something steady, something that shows you are moving forward. Because movement is life, growth is life, and stagnation is something people instinctively move away from. You must be able to answer that question with calm certainty, not loud excitement, not empty promises, but grounded clarity. Because confidence is quiet, direction is simple, purpose is consistent. When you combine these, you project a presence that does not need approval. Remember the words of Marcus Aurelius: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. That is your instruction. Do not talk about direction, live it. Do not explain your purpose, demonstrate it. Do not wait for the perfect plan, build step by step. Because a man with direction does not need to convince anyone, his life speaks for him. In today's world, where many men are lost in comfort, distractions, and endless scrolling, your discipline becomes your edge. Your clarity becomes your advantage. Your iron mind becomes your foundation. And this is why old Stoic wisdom still wins. It teaches you to focus on what you can control, to build daily habits, to stay steady under pressure, to move forward regardless of mood. That consistency is what creates attraction, respect, and long term success. So when that question comes again, and it will, do not hesitate. Do not deflect. Do not shrink your answer. Stand firm in your path. Speak with clarity, and most importantly, live in alignment with your words. Because direction is not something you say once, it is something you prove every single day. That is how Stoicism win becomes real in your life. That is how you develop an iron mind. That is how you become the man who does not chase attention, but naturally attracts it, not by trying harder, but by living sharper, stronger, and more intentional than most. And if this hits you, don't just watch, act. Drop this in the comments right now. I move with purpose, not excuses. Because direction is power, and a man without direction gets overlooked every time. Like the video, subscribe for more sharp, unfiltered insight, and remind yourself daily, a man who knows where he's going never needs to chase anyone. 4. Light questions test deep confidence. Understand this clearly. When a woman asks you something light, something almost playful like, "Do you think you're an interesting person?" she is not asking for information, she is reading your internal world. That is one of the subtle psychology tricks rooted deeply in female psychology, and if you miss it, you miss the entire game. This is not about your answer, it is about your state, your pause, your tone, your energy. That is what she feels. Hesitate and you communicate doubt. Start listing achievements and you signal that you need validation. Both lose power. Both break attraction. You must understand this. Confidence is not spoken loudly, it is felt quietly. That is how to Fall in Love truly works at a deeper level. Emotion first, logic later. So don't overthink, don't perform, be grounded. A man who is centered does not rush to prove himself, and he does not shrink from the moment either. He stands still, calm, aware. That is what she is testing. That is what these psychology tricks are designed to reveal. When you respond with something like, "I think I have my own depth," the right people see it. You are not trying to impress, you are setting a standard. You are saying, without saying it, "I don't chase approval. I recognize value, including my own." That is quiet confidence. That is strength without noise. And in female psychology, this is magnetic because it signals emotional stability, something rare and deeply attractive. Don't confuse confidence with performance. Don't confuse silence with weakness. A composed man speaks when needed, and when he does, his words land. That is power. Many men fail here because they think attraction is built through constant talking, constant proving, constant entertaining. No, attraction is built through presence, through control, through knowing who you are without needing to announce it. This is one of the core psychology tricks that separates men who are respected from men who are overlooked. You must learn to sit comfortably in your own skin. Be the man who doesn't rush to fill silence. Be the man who doesn't panic when tested. Because these small questions, these light, almost casual moments, are where she decides if you are safe to admire or easy to dismiss. And here is the deeper truth about how to fall in love. People don't fall for perfection, they fall for emotional certainty. They fall for someone who feels solid, real, grounded. So don't try to be perfect. Be steady, be clear, be at ease with who you are. That is enough. That is more than enough. When you understand female psychology, you stop reacting and start leading the interaction with calm awareness. You see the test for what it is, and you don't resist it. You pass it by simply being centered. No tension, no overreaction, just presence. That is the difference. That is the edge. So the next time you hear a question that sounds simple, remember this. It is never just a question. It is a window into your confidence. Step into it with calm certainty. Speak less, mean more. and let her feel the depth you don't need to explain. 5. She watches how you answer, not just what you say. Your tone, your posture, your presence. That is where the real message lives. Most men think attraction is about saying the right thing. It's not. Words are only the surface. Beneath them is something deeper, your energy. And that's exactly what she is reading. Every pause, every shift in your voice, every small movement in your body. She is not just listening to your answer, she is feeling your certainty. Look at this closely. Right words, nervous delivery, right pointing arrow, uncertain signal. Simple words, calm energy, right pointing arrow, undeniable presence. Do you see the difference? A man can memorize perfect lines, but if his voice shakes, if his eyes wander, if his body tightens, the message collapses. It tells her something without saying a word. I'm not fully grounded, and that breaks attraction instantly. But a high-value man understands something most overlook. He knows that calm energy speaks louder than clever language. He doesn't rush. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't try to impress. He simply is. That is masculine energy. When she asks you a question, don't just focus on the answer. Focus on how you deliver it. Sit back, breathe, hold your frame. Let your words come out slowly, naturally. No tension. No need to prove anything, because the moment you try to prove, you lose power. Be calm. Be steady. That is strength. Think about this. A man who says, "Yeah, I enjoy my work and I'm building something meaningful," while maintaining eye contact and speaking with ease, feels completely different from a man who says the same sentence but fidgets, rushes, and looks unsure. Same words, different energy, different outcome. Attraction is built on energy, not just language. And here's the truth most men avoid. Women are incredibly sensitive to emotional consistency. They can feel when something is off. You might think you're hiding your nervousness, but your body always tells the truth. Your shoulders tighten, your voice speeds up, your breathing changes, and she picks up on all of it instantly. So don't try to fake confidence. Build real presence. How? Slow down your responses. Pause before you speak. Keep your voice steady and relaxed. Hold eye contact without forcing it. These are small adjustments, but they create a powerful shift. They signal control. They signal awareness. They signal that you are comfortable in your own skin. That is what helps you attract women naturally. A high-value man doesn't chase approval. He doesn't perform for validation. He understands that his presence alone carries weight, and because of that, he becomes magnetic without trying. You must remember this. She is not testing your intelligence. She is testing your emotional stability. Can you stay calm under attention? Can you remain centered when observed? Can you hold your ground without overreacting? That is the real test. And most men fail not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack control over their own energy. So don't overcomplicate this. You don't need perfect words. You need controlled presence. Be the man who speaks less but means more. Be the man whose silence feels stronger than another man's explanation. Be the man whose energy makes her feel safe, curious, and drawn in. That is masculine energy at its core. And when you master this, something shifts. You stop trying to attract women and you start becoming the man they naturally gravitate toward. Because in the end, she won't remember every word you said, but she will always remember how you made her feel in that moment. And that feeling comes from your presence. 6. She tests if you can be controlled. When she looks at you and casually asks, "Are you always this busy?" Understand this clearly. It is not a question about your schedule. It is a quiet test of your center, your discipline, your ability to hold your ground in a world that constantly pulls at a man's time and attention. This is where most men fail, not because they lack value, but because they abandon it too quickly. They rush to please, they drop everything, and in doing so, they send a loud, unspoken message. I can be moved, I can be shaped, I can be led. And that is exactly what breaks attraction. But you must not do that. You must stand firm, calm, and composed. Because a man who is easily redirected is a man without direction, and direction is everything. As Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And that is the heart of this moment. You are not here to react. You are here to choose, to respond with intention, to show that your life already has structure, purpose, and weight. When you remain grounded, when you say, I have a full schedule, but I make time for what matters, you are not pushing her away. You are inviting her into a life that is already complete. And that is powerful. That is attractive. That is the signal of a man who lives by old Stoic wisdom, a man who understands that his time is his kingdom. In modern life, where distractions are endless and attention is cheap, the man who guards his time stands out immediately. He is rare, he is respected, he is desired. Because he does not chase, he selects, he decides. Don't misunderstand this. You are not being cold, you are being clear. You are showing that you have standards, and standards create respect. Respect builds attraction. Remember this. People don't value what is always available. They value what is intentional, what is chosen with care. This is why Stoicism win is not just a phrase, it is a way of living. It is the discipline to stay steady when emotions try to pull you off course. It is the ability to remain calm when tested. It is the strength to say, I will not abandon my priorities just to be liked, because a man who seeks approval loses himself, but a man with an iron mind builds a life others are drawn to. Repeat that to yourself. Be steady. Be intentional. Be unshaken. That is the standard. And here is the deeper truth. She is not trying to control you. She is trying to discover you. She is asking, is this a man who stands on his own or a man who adjusts to me? And your answer is not in your words, it is in your behavior, in your calm, in your pace, in your refusal to rush. You must understand, attraction grows in the presence of certainty, not in the chaos of overreaction. So don't drop everything. Don't rearrange your world at the first sign of interest. Don't prove your worth by sacrificing your structure. Instead, show her that your life is already meaningful, already directed, already strong. And if she joins something real. That is how old Stoic wisdom shapes a modern man. That is how Stoicism win becomes a living reality. That is how an iron mind is built, not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent decisions where you choose discipline over impulse, clarity over confusion, purpose over pleasing. And when you master this, when you truly live this, you don't just pass her test, you redefine it. Because now you are no longer reacting to her question, you are leading the frame of the interaction itself, calm, grounded, and unshakable. If you felt that, then you already understand the game, and you're no longer playing it blindly. Most men fail this test because they give up their time, their focus, their power, just to be liked. Don't be that man. Be the one who stays centered, who respects his own path, who sets the tone without apology. Because the truth is simple. The moment you can't be controlled, you become truly attractive. Now prove it to yourself. Drop this in the comments. I respect my time and I set my standards. 7. She asks about your circle to understand your status. When a woman is genuinely interested in an older man, she rarely says it directly. Instead, she observes, she listens, and she tests. One of the most revealing psychology tricks comes through a simple question that sounds casual but carries weight. What are your friends like? Now, understand this clearly. This is not small talk. This is female psychology at work. This is her quietly measuring your environment, your standards, and your identity without ever stating it outright. Because whether you realize it or not, your circle speaks before you do. It tells your story before you open your mouth, and it reveals what you tolerate, what you value, and what kind of life you are building. If your answer drifts toward negativity, they complain a lot, they're just getting by, we just hang out and pass time, then don't be surprised when her interest quietly fades. Because in her mind, that signals stagnation, lack of direction, and low emotional ambition. But if your answer reflects intention, they're focused, they're building something, they challenge me to grow, then you communicate strength without saying a word. You show that you live by standards, not by chance. And that is exactly how to fall in love in a mature, grounded way. Because attraction at this level is not built on charm alone, it is built on alignment and respect. You must understand this deeply. You are not judged in isolation, you are judged in context. The people around you are mirrors, and those mirrors either sharpen your image or distort it. Don't ignore this. Don't downplay it. Be intentional. Because a man who surrounds himself with driven, disciplined, and positive individuals sends a clear message. He values growth, he protects his energy, and he knows where he is going. That is power. That is presence. That is the silent language of high standards. As Jim Rohn once said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And in the world of female psychology, that truth carries even more weight. Because she is not just evaluating who you are today, she is predicting who you will become tomorrow based on the environment you choose to stay in. So don't settle for circles that drain you. Don't justify relationships that hold you back. Be selective. Be deliberate. Build a circle that reflects the life you want, not the life you are trying to escape. Because when she asks that simple question, she is not just asking about your friends, she is asking about your standards, your discipline, and your future. And if you want to master these psychology tricks, if you truly want to understand female psychology and learn how to fall in love in a way that creates respect, attraction, and long-term connection, then start here. Elevate your circle, protect your mindset, and choose your environment like your future depends on it, because it does. 8. She tests your patience. She tests your patience. And no, it's rarely obvious. It doesn't come with a warning label. It shows up quietly, almost playfully, wrapped inside repeated questions, subtle challenges, or moments that feel just slightly inconvenient. She might ask the same thing twice. She might question your decision in a gentle tone. She might even create a small delay or a mild disagreement just to observe what happens next. Don't dismiss this. Don't rush past it. This is not randomness. This is observation in motion. That is the moment where your masculine energy is being measured without a single word being said about it. Now, understand this clearly. Patience is not about waiting. It is about how you behave while waiting. Anyone can stay silent for a few seconds, but not every man can stay grounded when his expectations are not immediately met. Not every man can remain composed when his rhythm is interrupted. And that is exactly why this test exists. She is not just listening to your answers. She is reading your reactions. She is watching your timing. She is feeling your emotional stability in real time. Example: she repeats a question you already answered. Maybe something simple like, "So you're really busy this week?" You already explained it. You already made it clear. Yet here it comes again. Now pause. This is where most men slip without realizing it. They react. They sigh. They get slightly irritated. Their tone shifts just enough to reveal tension. And in that tiny shift, the message is sent. Pressure creates cracks. That is not the signal of a high-value man. But there is another path, a stronger path. You hear the repeated question, and instead of reacting, you respond with calm clarity. You don't rush, you don't defend, you don't over-explain. You simply reaffirm your position, steady and relaxed, as if nothing has been disturbed. That is power. That is control. That is masculine energy in its purest form. You must understand this deeply. Women are not testing your words nearly as much as they are testing your emotional consistency. Words can be rehearsed. Confidence can be imitated for a moment. But patience exposes truth. Because when a man is truly grounded, he doesn't need to protect his ego in every small interaction. He doesn't feel threatened by repetition. He doesn't feel challenged by minor friction. He remains steady, always. And here is the deeper layer most men miss. These moments are not about winning or losing. They are about revealing who you are under pressure. Life itself will repeat questions. Challenges will come again and again, just in different forms. If you lose your center over something small, what happens when something real hits? That is the silent question behind her behavior. Can you stay steady under pressure? Can you hold your frame when things are not perfectly smooth? Don't react emotionally. That is the rule. Because emotional reactions signal instability. They suggest that your internal state is controlled by external triggers. And once that pattern is seen, attraction begins to fade. Not because you said the wrong thing, but because you revealed a lack of control over yourself. And control over self is the foundation of attraction. Without it, nothing else holds. Be calm. That is the instruction. Be slow in your responses. Be deliberate. Let your tone remain even. Let your body language stay relaxed. When she challenges you subtly, don't lean forward trying to prove a point. Lean back into your certainty. That is the difference between chasing approval and embodying value. A high-value man does not rush to correct every misunderstanding. He trusts his clarity. He trusts his direction. And here's something powerful. When you stay calm, you flip the dynamic without saying a word. Suddenly, she feels it, the stability, the grounded presence, the quiet confidence that doesn't need to raise its voice. That is what attracts women on a deeper level. Not loud confidence, not forced charm, but controlled, steady masculine energy that remains unshaken even when tested. Think about it this way. Anyone can be pleasant when things are easy. Anyone can smile when everything flows perfectly. But when tension appears, even in small doses, that's when character is revealed. That's when presence becomes real. That's when attraction either grows or disappears. You must train yourself for this, not just in dating, but in life. Start noticing your reactions. When something repeats, do you get impatient? When plans change, do you lose composure? When someone questions you, do you feel the need to defend immediately? These are the moments that shape your identity. These are the patterns that either build or break your image as a high-value man. And here is the truth most men avoid. Patience is not passive. It is active control. It is the decision to remain centered when your instincts push you to react. It is discipline in emotional form. It is strength without noise. So when she tests your patience, don't take it personally. Don't label it as a problem. See it for what it is, an opportunity, a moment to demonstrate who you are without saying it directly, a moment to show that your calm is not temporary, but part of your nature. Because in the end, she's not asking, can you answer correctly? She's asking, can you handle pressure without losing yourself? And your reaction gives her the answer instantly. Stay steady, stay composed. That is how you pass the test. That is how you attract women without forcing anything. That is how masculine energy becomes something she can feel, not just hear. And once she feels that, everything changes. If this message hit you, don't just scroll past it. This is where most men slip, right at the moment pressure shows up. Stay calm, stay steady. That is the test. Like this video, subscribe for more real, unfiltered wisdom, and prove to yourself that you're not reacting, you're leading. Now comment this below and mean it. I stay calm under pressure. I am in control. 9. Questions about love test your emotional balance. What do you think about relationships? That question sounds simple, almost casual, but don't be fooled. It is not small talk. It is a test, a precise test, a quiet measurement of your emotional balance, your inner stability, and your ability to stand firm in a world that constantly pulls men off center. When a woman asks this, she is not just listening to your words, she is studying your frame, your tone, your certainty. This is where many men reveal too much need without realizing it. They say, I need love to feel complete, thinking it sounds honest, romantic, even deep. But what it actually signals is dependency. It tells her that your happiness is negotiable, that your identity can shift depending on who stands in front of you. And that is where attraction quietly fades. A man grounded in old Stoic wisdom understands something different. He knows love is powerful, but it is not his foundation. He does not build his life on something external. He builds it within. So his answer sounds different: calm, measured, unshaken. I value love, but I remain myself. That is strength. That is clarity. That is the voice of a man who has done the work. As Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is the essence of this moment. You must not hand over your emotional control. You must not outsource your sense of worth. Because the modern world constantly pressures men to chase validation through relationships, through attention, through approval. But Stoicism, win, is about resisting that pressure. It is about choosing self-mastery over emotional chaos. It is about becoming the man who enjoys love but does not depend on it to function. And here is the truth most men avoid. Women are not looking for a man who needs them. They are drawn to a man who chooses them. There is a massive difference. Need creates pressure. Choice creates attraction. Need says, I cannot live without you. Choice says, my life is already full, and I invite you into it. That is an iron mind. That is presence. That is what makes a man unforgettable. In modern dating, this test shows up everywhere: on first dates, in casual conversations, even in text messages. She might ask indirectly, she might joke about relationships, she might challenge your views. But the purpose is always the same. Can you stay centered? Can you express desire without losing control? Can you stand in your identity without bending under emotional pressure? Most men fail here because they try to impress, they over-explain, they overgive, they chase approval. Don't do that. Don't overcomplicate it. Be clear, be grounded, be steady. That is the instruction. Because when you speak from a place of completeness, your words carry weight, your silence carries weight, even your presence carries weight. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to prove your value. You simply are. As Epictetus taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. And mastery is exactly what she is looking for, even if she never says it out loud. She wants a man who can love deeply but never lose direction. A man who can connect emotionally but never collapse into dependence. A man who can walk away if needed, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. That is where real power lives. So when you hear that question, what do you think about relationships? Pause for a moment. Don't rush. Don't react emotionally. Answer with intention. Answer with clarity. Let your response reflect a life already in order, not a life waiting to be completed. Because here's the deeper layer. This is not just about her test. This is about your standard, your philosophy, your identity as a man. If you don't define it, someone else will. And once you start bending to fit expectations, you lose something far more valuable than any relationship. You lose yourself. That is why old Stoic wisdom matters more today than ever before. It reminds you to return to center, to detach from outcomes, to focus on what you can control: your thoughts, your actions, your standards. That is Stoicism win. And when you live this way consistently, something powerful happens. You stop chasing, you stop proving, you stop negotiating your worth. Instead, you attract naturally, effortlessly, because people can feel it. They can sense when a man is anchored in something deeper. This is not about being cold. This is not about shutting down emotions. It is about balance, emotional strength, emotional discipline. You feel deeply, but you do not get carried away. You care, but you do not lose control. That is the balance she is testing. That is the balance you must develop. Build an iron mind. Strengthen your internal world. Make your identity so solid that no question, no test, no situation can shake it. And remember this: love is not your foundation. You are. Love is something you share, not something you depend on. Hold that line. Stay grounded, stay sharp, stay in control. That is how you pass the test. That is how you win, not just in relationships, but in life. 10. In the end, she's looking for safety, not perfection. In the end, understand this clearly. All her questions, all her subtle behaviors, all those small, almost invisible psychology tricks are not random. They are not games without purpose. They all point in one direction. She is searching for emotional safety, not perfection. That is the truth most men overlook, especially when trying to decode female psychology, because they assume they must impress, perform, or outshine everyone else. But no, that is not what creates connection. That is not how to fall in love in a real, lasting way. She is quietly asking herself, can I relax around this man? Can I trust his reactions? Can I feel calm in his presence? And every word you say, every pause, every reaction becomes part of her answer. Don't rush to prove your worth with status or material success. Don't assume being the most attractive man in the room gives you the advantage, because it doesn't guarantee emotional safety, and without that, attraction fades fast. Be consistent, be grounded, be clear. That is what she measures. That is what she remembers. For example, when she asks you something simple, maybe even repetitive, she is not just asking for information. She is observing your tone, your patience, your stability. Because in female psychology, consistency signals reliability, and reliability builds trust. If your mood swings, if your words shift depending on pressure, she feels uncertainty, and uncertainty creates distance. But when you remain steady, when your words align with your actions over time, something powerful happens. She begins to feel safe without even realizing why. That is how to fall in love naturally, not through force, not through performance, but through emotional stability that she can lean into. Understand this deeply. Women are not looking for flawless men. They are looking for predictable strength, the kind that doesn't shake under pressure, the kind that doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't try to outplay these psychology tricks. Instead, rise above them by becoming the man who doesn't need to react to every test because he understands their purpose. When she challenges you, don't take it personally. Be calm. When she questions you, don't become defensive. Be clear. When she pulls back slightly, don't chase impulsively. Stay centered. That is how you show her, without saying a word, that you are emotionally stable. And emotional stability is rare. It stands out more than looks, more than money, more than charm. In the world of female psychology, the man who can hold his frame, who can stay composed when things are uncertain, is the man who becomes unforgettable. Think about it. Anyone can be impressive for a moment, but very few can be steady over time. And that steadiness is what creates long-term attraction. That is how to fall in love in a way that lasts beyond excitement. Don't aim to be perfect. because perfection creates pressure, and pressure creates distance. Instead, aim to be real, but controlled, calm, but confident, open, but grounded. That balance is where emotional safety lives. And here's the truth most men need to hear. She doesn't need you to solve every problem. She doesn't need you to have all the answers. But she does need to feel that your presence is stable, that your energy is not chaotic, that your reactions are not unpredictable. Because when a woman feels emotionally safe, she opens naturally, she invests willingly, she connects deeply without fear. And all those psychology tricks, all those subtle tests start to fade away because she no longer needs to question you. She already feels the answer. So be that man, not the one who tries to win every interaction, but the one who creates calm in every interaction. Don't chase validation, build presence. Don't react emotionally, respond intentionally. Don't focus on being liked, focus on being steady. That is the shift that separates temporary attraction from lasting connection. That is the core of female psychology. Simple, but not easy. Clear, but often ignored. And if you truly understand this, if you truly live it, you won't just pass her tests, you will move beyond them entirely, because you are no longer trying to prove anything. You are simply showing, through your consistent actions, that you are a man she can trust. And trust, more than anything else, is how to fall in love in a way that feels safe, real, and enduring. All right, my friend, thank you for staying with me until the very end. Here's something you need to carry with you. It's not about saying the perfect words. It's about becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to try so hard. Women don't choose perfection. They choose presence. They feel your energy before they judge your answers. So don't perform. Don't chase. Don't lose yourself trying to impress. Be calm. Be grounded. Be disciplined in your thoughts and your actions. That is where your power is. When you build that inner strength, that quiet confidence, something shifts. You stop chasing and life starts coming toward you. So take this seriously. Work on yourself every single day. Protect your standards and never trade your self-respect for attention. Stay strong, stay steady, and I'll see you in the next video. If she does this, she's not avoiding you. She's scared of falling for you. Female psychology. Psychology tricks. Welcome to our channel, Stoicism Win, where you find interesting and useful wisdom from the Stoic philosophers to help guide you toward a happy, meaningful, and honorable life. As the Stoic thinker Seneca wisely reminds us, wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. And that truth matters deeply in love, because not every silence is rejection, and not every distance means the door is closed. Sometimes a woman shows real interest, then suddenly goes quiet, and most men immediately assume the worst. They think it means she is no longer interested. They think the connection is over. But what if that very assumption is the reason so many promising connections fall apart before they ever have the chance to grow? Because sometimes, when a woman pulls away, it is not because she feels nothing. It is because she feels something real, and that reality unsettles her more than indifference ever could. That is the part many men fail to understand. When emotions begin to deepen, fear often rises with them. The moment things stop feeling casual and start feeling meaningful, some people do not move closer. They retreat. Not because they do not care, but because caring suddenly feels risky. And here is the hard truth most men need to hear. If you respond the way most men do, by over-explaining, constantly reassuring, or chasing for answers, you do not calm the situation. You make it heavier. You do not remove her fear. You often confirm it. There is a psychological shift here that many men misread completely. They confuse emotional retreat with rejection, when in reality, the two are not always the same. Once you learn to recognize that difference, you begin to see clearly. You stop panicking, you stop sabotaging yourself, and you start responding with the kind of calm, strength, patience, and self respect that keeps a real connection alive instead of pushing it away. 1. The panic behind unexpected feelings. Here is what most men never stop to consider. When a woman begins to feel something real, something deep and unexpected, her first reaction is not joy, it is panic. That is the hidden layer of female psychology that many overlook. It is not about you doing something wrong. It is about what those feelings represent. Emotional closeness, to her, can feel like standing at the edge of something powerful and uncontrollable. Not because she is falling yet, but because she knows she could. That is what makes it intense. That is what makes it frightening. And if she has ever learned, through experience, that closeness leads to pain, then her instinct is not to move closer, but to protect herself. You must understand this clearly. When she pulls back, it is not a strategy, it is not a game, it is a response to internal pressure. And here is where most men fail. Don't try to fix it. Don't rush in with explanations, reassurance, or emotional speeches. You think you are helping. You think clarity will calm things down. But in reality, you are accelerating the very thing she fears: loss of control. That is why these psychology tricks matter. Not manipulation, but awareness. Because when you push for answers, when you chase for certainty, you are not creating safety, you are creating pressure. Be honest with yourself. The last time she went quiet, you reached out not because it was necessary, but because the silence made you uneasy. That is human, but that is also where things shift. You were trying to escape your discomfort, not support her process. And she feels that, subtly but deeply. This is how to fall in love the right way, by not forcing it, by allowing space where fear can breathe without being chased away. Modern women are taught to be independent, to rely on themselves, to never lose control of their lives. That strength is real. But it comes with a quiet conflict. When real feelings appear, they challenge that independence. She begins to question herself. If I let this grow, will I lose who I am? If I care this much, will I become vulnerable in a way I can't handle? This is the tension of female psychology. The stronger she appears, the more carefully she protects her emotional world. And here is the truth most men miss. The woman who seems hardest to reach is often the one who feels the deepest. She is not distant because she lacks interest. She is distant because the interest is real, and real feelings carry weight. Think about your own life. Have you ever stepped back from something you truly wanted because it felt too important, too risky? Then you already understand her. That is not weakness. That is awareness of what is at stake. So don't misread her distance. Don't label it as rejection. That is where men lose their ground. Instead, recognize it for what it is: a moment of emotional self protection. And here is the irony: the connections that trigger this kind of response are rarely casual. They are not shallow. They are not forgettable. They are the ones that matter. So if she pulls back, don't chase. Don't retreat either. Stay grounded. Stay consistent. Be the man who does not react out of fear. Because how to fall in love is not about intensity, it is about stability. And when you master that, you stop pushing people away and start becoming someone they feel safe coming back to. 2. Hidden emotional tests you didn't notice. Hidden emotional tests. They are quiet, subtle, and often invisible to the untrained eye, yet they shape the direction of almost every connection you have ever experienced. And here is the truth that may shift your entire perspective. She has likely tested you more than once, maybe even several times, without ever announcing that a test was taking place. Not because she is calculating or trying to manipulate you, But because human nature, especially in matters of attraction and emotional safety, works beneath the surface, these tests are not planned like a strategy meeting. They arise instinctively, almost like a reflex, designed to answer one core question: is this man safe for me to open up to? That is what you must understand. This is not about tricks. This is about emotional security. Now, look closely at how these tests actually appear in real life. They are rarely dramatic. They are simple, almost casual moments that carry deeper meaning. She goes cold for a day or two, not replying the way she did before. Don't panic, be still. That is your moment. She mentions another man in conversation, perhaps lightly, perhaps playfully. Don't react emotionally, be grounded. She cancels a plan at the last minute. Don't take it personally, move forward with your life. She opens up, shares something vulnerable, then quietly observes how you respond. Don't rush to fix it, be present. These moments may seem small, but they are powerful signals, and how you respond defines everything that follows. Here is where most men lose their footing, not because they lack value, but because they misunderstand the situation. When she pulls back, they lean in too hard. When she creates space, they try to close it immediately. When uncertainty appears, they attempt to control it. Don't do that. That is the exact reaction that works against you. A high value man does not chase emotional fluctuations. He observes them, he understands them, he remains centered in his own frame. That is masculine energy in its pure form, calm, steady, and unshaken by temporary changes. Think about this clearly. When she went cold and you started texting more, asking questions, seeking reassurance, what did that communicate? Not love, not strength. It communicated that her behavior controlled your emotional state. When she mentioned another guy and you became visibly uncomfortable or overcompensated by pretending not to care, what did that show? Not confidence. It showed that your sense of stability depended on her validation. When she canceled plans and you reacted as if it was a personal rejection, what did that reveal? It revealed that you placed her actions above your own sense of direction. Do not misunderstand this message. This is not about blaming yourself. This is about awareness. You did what most men do because no one taught you to see these patterns. And once you see them, everything changes. Because here is the deeper truth behind all of this. She is not testing whether you like her. She already knows that. Attraction is rarely hidden. What she is truly exploring is whether you can handle emotional uncertainty without collapsing into it. Can you remain calm when things feel unclear? Can you stay consistent when her behavior is inconsistent? Can you show interest without becoming dependent on the outcome? That is the real test. And this is where you must shift your mindset. Don't try to pass the test by acting differently on the surface. Be different at the core. A high value man does not perform confidence, he lives from it. He does not pretend to be unaffected, he is naturally centered. He does not chase approval. He attracts women by being rooted in his own life, his own purpose, his own direction. So, what does that look like in practice? It looks like this. When she pulls away, you don't rush in. You continue your day. You focus on your work, your goals, your routines. That is masculine energy, focused, disciplined, self-directed. When she mentions another man, you don't compete. You don't react. You understand that attraction grows in an environment of emotional stability, not emotional competition. When she cancels plans, you don't sit there wondering what it means. You already have a life in motion. You simply move forward. This is the paradox many men struggle to accept. The less you try to control the situation, the more attractive you become. Because control signals fear, and calm signals strength. Now let's go deeper. One of the most overlooked tests is when she shares something vulnerable. This is not just a moment of connection, it is a moment of evaluation. She is asking, without saying it directly, can this man hold emotional space, or will he react in a way that makes me feel unsafe? Don't rush to solve her problems. Don't minimize her feelings. Don't turn it into a lecture. Be present. Listen. Let her feel heard. That is strength. That is what allows a woman to relax emotionally around you. And here is something you must hold on to. These tests never truly stop. Not in a negative way, but in a natural human way. Attraction is not a one-time event. It is something that is maintained through consistency, through how you show up day after day, through how you handle pressure, uncertainty, and change. So don't aim to win once. Aim to become the kind of man who doesn't need to win because he already stands on solid ground. Now, pause for a moment and reflect on your past interactions, not with regret, but with clarity. Think about the times you felt confused, the times you overanalyzed, the times you tried to fix something that didn't need fixing. Those were not failures. They were lessons. And now you see them differently. Now you understand the pattern. And with that understanding comes power. Because from this point forward, you move differently. You don't chase. You attract women by being grounded in who you are. You don't react impulsively. You respond with intention. You don't lose yourself in emotional highs and lows. You stay steady. That is what separates a man who struggles from a man who leads his life with quiet confidence. So remember this clearly. Don't panic when things shift. Don't overreact when things feel uncertain. Don't make everything about you. Be calm. Be focused. Be consistent. That is how you pass tests without even trying to pass them. And more importantly, that is how you become the man who doesn't just seek connection, but creates it naturally, effortlessly, and with strength that speaks louder than words. Now you see it clearly. It was never about her pulling away. It was about who you become when she does. So here's your line. Own it, live it. Drop this in the comments right now. I stay called, I stay grounded, I don't chase, I attract. If that hits you, don't scroll past it. Like the video, subscribe for more real, no-nonsense wisdom, and remember this: a man who is steady in chaos is a man impossible to ignore. 3. The hot and cold pattern is not random. The hot and cold pattern is not random, and the moment you truly understand this, your entire perspective shifts from confusion to control. One day, she is fully engaged, replying instantly, laughing, opening up, creating a connection that feels real and effortless. Then suddenly, the next day, she pulls back. Her responses are short, delayed, distant, and your instinct is to label it as rejection, to assume you did something wrong, to question your value. But stop right there, because that reaction is exactly what keeps you stuck. As Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is where old Stoic wisdom begins to separate the reactive man from the grounded one, the confused man from the one with an iron mind. You must understand this clearly. Her behavior is not random, it is proportional. The closer she feels, the more intense the pullback can become, because emotional closeness does not just create attraction, it also triggers fear, and fear triggers retreat. That is human nature, not manipulation, not rejection, but protection. If she truly had no interest, there would be no warmth to begin with, no deep conversation, no emotional investment, just consistent indifference. But this fluctuation, this back and forth, this emotional contrast, that is internal conflict unfolding in real time. Part of her wants to move closer, to explore the connection, to feel something real. Another part wants to stay safe, to avoid vulnerability, to protect herself from uncertainty. And often, at least temporarily, that protective instinct wins. Now, here is where most men lose their power. They react instead of observe. They chase instead of center themselves. They try to fix instead of understand. In doing so, they amplify the very dynamic that pushes her further away. Modern life has conditioned you to expect instant clarity, instant replies, instant validation. But human emotions do not operate on a predictable schedule. They move in waves. And if you cannot stay steady when the wave pulls back, you will never ride it when it moves forward. This is why Stoicism, when is not just philosophy, it is strategy, it is discipline, it is the ability to remain grounded when everything around you feels uncertain. Pay attention to the pattern, not just the moment. Notice when she pulls away. Is it after a deep conversation? After she shared something personal? After the connection felt stronger than usual? If the answer is yes, then you are not losing her. You are witnessing her process her own emotions, and that requires patience, not pressure. As Epictetus taught, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. What is in your power here is your response, your composure, your ability to not take things personally. You must stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and start asking, "What is actually happening here?" Because those are two very different mindsets. One leads to insecurity, the other leads to clarity. Do not chase when she pulls back. Do not flood her with messages trying to regain control. Do not explain yourself into exhaustion. That is not strength. That is emotional dependence disguised as effort. Instead, be steady, be calm, be grounded. Let her come back to the connection without pressure, because attraction grows in space, not in pursuit. This is where your iron mind is forged, not when things are easy, but when things are uncertain. When you feel the urge to react, but choose discipline instead. When you feel the urge to chase, but choose self respect instead. Repetition builds mastery. So hear this again. It is not random. It is proportional. It is not rejection. It is protection. It is not about you. It is about her internal balance between desire and fear. And when you truly internalize this, something powerful happens. You stop overanalyzing every message. You stop attaching your self-worth to her responses. You stop playing a game you were never meant to play, and you start leading with calm confidence. In today's world, where relationships are often rushed, misunderstood, and driven by insecurity, the man who understands emotional dynamics without reacting impulsively stands out immediately, not by force, not by control, but by presence. You become the one who does not panic, the one who does not chase, the one who does not lose himself in uncertainty. And that energy is rare. That energy is respected. That energy attracts. Stoicism win is about mastering this exact moment, the moment where most men fail, the moment where emotions rise and clarity fades, and choosing to remain centered anyway. So the next time she goes cold after being warm, do not collapse into doubt. Do not rush to fix what is not broken. Do not take it personally. Observe the pattern, trust the process, and hold your ground, because that is how you win, not just in attraction, but in life. As Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." And bravery here is not loud, it is not aggressive. It is quiet, controlled, disciplined. It is the ability to remain yourself when everything tempts you to react. Build that iron mind. Apply old Stoic wisdom daily, and you will see clearly what once confused you. You will stay calm where others panic, and you will move through relationships with a level of clarity and strength that most never reach. 4. She is watching even when she acts distant. She is watching, even when she acts distant. And if you miss this, you will misread the entire situation. That is the mistake most men make when they don't understand female psychology or the deeper psychology tricks behind attraction and emotional protection. You see the delayed replies, the short answers, the polite distance, and you assume disinterest Don't jump to that conclusion because real disinterest looks very different. It looks like absence, like silence without curiosity, like a complete lack of awareness about your life. But this woman, she is aware, she is observant, she is quietly paying attention in ways that reveal far more than her words ever will. She takes hours to respond, yet she watches your stories almost instantly. That is not coincidence. That is selective engagement. That is emotional caution wrapped in curiosity. She keeps space in conversation, yet her eyes find you when you are not looking. That is not random. That is subconscious pull. She says she is busy, yet she recalls details from weeks ago, small things you said in passing. That is not politeness, that is investment. You must understand this clearly. People do not remember what does not matter to them. When someone stores your words, replays your tone, notices your patterns, they are emotionally involved, whether they admit it or not. This is where most men fail the test without even realizing there was a test because they react instead of understanding the psychology tricks at play. They chase, they question, they seek reassurance. Don't do that. Be calm, be grounded, be the man who sees without needing confirmation. Because what you are witnessing is not avoidance, it is internal conflict. It is the tension between desire and fear. And this is a core principle in female psychology when it comes to how to fall in love. When emotions start to feel real, when connection deepens beyond surface level, it triggers vulnerability, and vulnerability creates hesitation. She is not pulling away because she feels nothing. She is pulling away because she feels something that has the power to affect her. That is the paradox you must learn to recognize. A woman who does not care will not monitor your life. She will not notice your habits. She will not analyze your behavior. She simply moves on. But a woman who is afraid of falling, she becomes hyper aware. She notices when you change your routine. She notices who you spend time with. She notices your energy, your mood shifts, your absences. She may not say a word, but she is observing everything. And here is the truth she may not even admit to herself. Noticing means caring, and caring means risk. That is why she creates distance, not to disconnect, but to protect. Think about your own experience. The last time you truly liked someone, you paid attention in ways that surprised you. You checked their updates, you remembered small things, even when you told yourself not to get too involved. That is exactly what is happening here, except she is resisting it more intensely. This is why understanding psychology tricks and female psychology is not about manipulation. It is about awareness. It is about seeing what is unspoken and responding with strength instead of insecurity. So, what should you do? Don't confront her with it. Don't call it out. Don't demand clarity. That will only push her further into defense mode. Instead, communicate without words. Live fully. Be active. Be engaged in your own life. Share moments that reflect growth, passion, purpose, not to impress her, not to provoke a reaction, but because that is who you are becoming. That is the man who naturally attracts attention, the man who understands how to fall in love without losing himself, the man who creates space for connection without forcing it. When she sees you thriving, when she sees consistency, when she sees that your world does not revolve around her reactions, it does something powerful. It reduces her fear. Because now, liking you does not feel like losing control. It feels like stepping into something real. And that is what she is testing, even if she doesn't consciously know it. She is asking, if I let myself feel this, will I be safe emotionally? Your job is not to answer that with words. Your job is to embody the answer through your behavior. Stay steady. Stay composed. Don't overanalyze every message delay. Don't let your emotions spike based on her inconsistency. That is where many men lose their position. They become reactive. They become uncertain. And uncertainty is not attractive. Be the opposite. Be clarity. Be calm. Be someone who understands that attraction grows in space, not pressure. And remember this, even if she never comments, even if she never openly acknowledges it, she is watching. She is observing how you live, how you respond, how you carry yourself. Every action you take is communication. Every moment you remain grounded is reassurance. This is the deeper layer of psychology tricks and female psychology that most overlook. Attraction is not built through constant interaction. It is built through perception, through presence, through emotional stability. So don't chase visibility, create value. Don't seek attention, build a life that naturally draws it. Because when a woman is quietly watching, she is already more invested than she appears. And if you handle that moment with patience and strength, you don't just keep her interest, you create the conditions for something deeper, something real, something that moves beyond surface attraction into genuine connection, the kind that defines how to fall in love in a way that is balanced, mutual, and lasting. If this hit you, don't just sit on it, act on it. Understand the signal. Stay calm, stay grounded. Don't chase, rise. Because when she watches in silence, that's not distance, that's attention without courage. So here's your move. Step into your life fully, grow quietly, and let your actions speak louder than your words. And if you truly understand this dynamic, drop this in the comments right now. She's not distant, she's watching, and I stay focused. Like the video, subscribe for more sharp insights, and remember, the man who lives well never needs to chase attention. He naturally becomes it. 5. Her friends reveal the truth. Her friends will often tell you the truth she is not ready to say out loud. And if you are paying attention, this is where the illusion breaks and clarity begins. Because attraction does not exist in isolation. It leaks. It shows up in conversations, in laughter shared behind closed doors, in the quiet way her name comes up when you are not even in the room. And that is exactly why this sign matters more than most men realize. You are not just dealing with her actions, you are witnessing the ripple effect of her emotions through the people closest to her. Think about it. Her friends act strange around you. Not cold, not dismissive, just different. They exchange looks when you walk in. They smile in a way that feels like they know something you do not. They seem confused when she pulls away from you, almost like her behavior does not match the version of the story they have been hearing. That is not random. That is contrast. And contrast reveals truth. You must understand this. People who hear nothing show nothing, but people who have heard everything, they react. And then it gets even clearer. One of them pulls you aside. Casual tone, but intentional words. She talks about you, you know? Or you should text her. Or even, don't give up on her. That is not small talk. That is not politeness. That is a window into what is happening behind the scenes. Because women do not bring up men they do not care about in conversations with their inner circle. They simply do not. There is no emotional investment there, no curiosity, no analysis, nothing to discuss. Silence means indifference, but discussion, that means interest. That means you have entered her mental and emotional space. Do not ignore this. Most men do. They overanalyze her silence, her distance, her mixed signals. They look at what is missing instead of what is being revealed indirectly. That is the mistake. Don't chase what is unclear. Observe what is consistent. Her friends are consistent. Their behavior is not emotional chaos. It is information. And a high-value man knows how to read information without reacting emotionally. Because here is the deeper truth. If her friends are invested in you, it is because she has been talking about you a lot. Not just your name, not just surface-level details. They know the tone of your conversations. They know how you made her laugh. They know the little things you said that stayed with her longer than she expected. They know the moments that replay in her mind when she is alone. That is how women process attraction. They relive it, they share it, they dissect it. and her friends become witnesses to that process. But it does not stop there. They also know her fears, her hesitation, her internal conflict. They know when she says, I don't know what I'm feeling, or it's moving too fast, or what if this doesn't work? You see confidence on the surface. They see vulnerability underneath. You see distance. They hear confusion. And that is why their behavior toward you feels so layered, because they are holding both sides of her story at the same time. That is where most men lose their grounding. They take her distance personally, they assume rejection, they start chasing clarity, over explaining themselves, trying to fix something that was never broken. Don't do that. Be still. Be observant. That is masculine energy. That is how you attract women without forcing anything. Because when you react emotionally, you disrupt the natural flow. But when you remain steady, you allow the truth to reveal itself fully. Now pay attention to this next level, because this is where it becomes undeniable. Her friends start creating opportunities, subtle at first, group settings where you are both invited, moments where they conveniently leave the two of you alone, situations that feel almost arranged. That is not coincidence. That is coordination. That is intention moving through action. You must understand what that means. They are rooting for you, not casually, not passively, actively. They are trying to help her move past her own hesitation. They see something in you that aligns with what she needs, even if she is not ready to admit it. And people do not invest energy like that unless they believe in the outcome. That is human nature. We support what we see value in. We create space for what we believe could work. So ask yourself this: why would her inner circle, her protective circle, be opening doors for you if there was nothing there? They would not. They do not waste time. They do not entertain possibilities that hold no weight, especially when it comes to someone they care about. Their standard is not random, it is selective. And if you are being included in that space, it means you have already passed a filter you did not even know existed. This is where your mindset must shift. Stop questioning if you are reading too much into it. That doubt is what weakens your presence. That hesitation is what pulls you out of alignment. Instead, trust the pattern, trust the consistency, trust the signals that come from outside her direct control. Because her words can be guarded, her actions can be conflicted, but her environment, that reveals what she cannot hide. A high value man does not need constant reassurance. He reads reality as it is. He understands that attraction is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, indirect, even confusing, but it is still there. And when you combine her subtle signals with the clear behavior of her friends, the picture becomes undeniable. So don't chase, don't panic, don't try to force clarity through pressure. That is not how you attract women. That is how you push them further into hesitation. Instead, hold your ground, stay composed. Be the man who does not get shaken by mixed signals because he understands the deeper dynamics at play. That is masculine energy: calm, observant, certain without being loud about it. And here is the final truth you need to lock in. When her friends are investing in you, they are confirming something she has not yet fully expressed. They are showing you that what you feel is not one-sided, that what you sense is not imagined, that there is something real developing beneath the surface. So don't walk away too early. Don't misread her fear as disinterest, and don't lower your value by reacting impulsively. Be patient, be grounded. Be the man who understands that sometimes the truth is not in what she says, it is in what the people closest to her cannot help but reveal. And if you can hold that frame, if you can stay steady in that awareness, you will naturally position yourself as the kind of man who doesn't just attract women, but the kind they feel safe enough to finally stop running from. 6. The right way to respond when she pulls back. The right way to respond when she pulls back is where most men quietly lose the game without even realizing it. And if you want to stand apart, you must understand this with clarity and discipline. When she creates distance, it is not a signal for you to panic, and it is not a signal for you to disappear. It is a moment that tests your emotional stability, your self worth, and your ability to live by what I call an iron mind. Most men fall into one of two traps. They chase harder, over explaining, over texting, trying to prove they are safe, trying to win her back in real time. Or they swing to the other extreme, cutting her off, acting cold, convincing themselves she is not worth it. Both reactions are driven by emotion, not strength. Both reactions communicate instability. As Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And this is where old Stoic wisdom becomes your advantage. When you chase, you show her that her attention controls your emotional state. When you disappear, you show her that your interest was fragile, conditional, easily shaken. Neither builds trust, neither creates attraction, neither reflects the calm, grounded energy of a man who is centered in his own life. Understand this deeply. Attraction grows in the presence of emotional certainty, not emotional reaction. So, what should you do? You match her energy, but not with ego, with awareness. If she pulls back, you step back too, not as punishment, not as a tactic, but as a natural reflection of your life being full, your time being valuable, your attention being earned, not given away freely. This is Stoicism win in action. You are not reacting to her behavior. You are anchored in your own rhythm. And here is the crucial shift that most men miss. When you pull back, you must pull back to something, not into emptiness. Your life must remain active, meaningful, forward moving. Work, purpose, growth, health, social life. These are not distractions, they are your foundation. As Seneca taught, begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. That means you do not pause your life because someone else becomes uncertain. You continue building, you continue moving, you continue becoming. And from that place, your communication changes completely. You do not send messages seeking reassurance. You do not ask questions that reveal insecurity. Instead, you reach out occasionally with calm, intention, and presence. Light, genuine, specific. For example, instead of saying, "Hey, haven't heard from you, is everything okay?" which quietly asks for validation, you say, "Saw something today that reminded me of what you said about that book, made me smile. Hope you're doing well." Short, grounded, no pressure, no neediness. This is the voice of a man who is engaged in life, not waiting on a response to feel complete. And when she senses that, something shifts. Her fear, the very thing that made her pull back, begins to dissolve. Because often when a woman steps back, it is not because she lacks interest, it is because things started to feel real. And real connection carries risk, emotional risk, vulnerability, uncertainty. If you respond with pressure, you amplify that fear. If you respond with absence, you confirm instability. But if you respond with calm consistency, you create safety. You show her, without saying a word, that you are steady, that your interest is real, but your identity is not dependent on her. That is power. That is control. That is the iron mind in motion. And understand this clearly. You are not trying to manipulate her feelings. You are mastering your own. That is the essence of old Stoic wisdom. You cannot control her pace. You cannot control her emotions, but you can control your response, and your response defines everything. As Epictetus said, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen. Accept the moment. Adapt with strength. Move with intention. In modern life, where communication is instant and expectations are high, this discipline is rare, and that is exactly why it works. Most men react, Few men remain centered. Most men seek reassurance. Few men embody it. So be the man who does not rush. Be the man who does not chase. Be the man who does not withdraw in silence. Be the man who stays grounded, continues forward, and allows space without losing presence. That is Stoicism win. That is how you turn uncertainty into attraction. That is how you build something real, not forced. And most importantly, that is how you master your life regardless of the outcome. If you understand this, then stop chasing, stop disappearing, and start leading your emotions with calm control, because that's what separates a man with purpose from a man seeking validation. You don't react, you respond. You don't beg, you attract. You stay steady while everything else moves. As the great Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events, and that is your edge. If this message hit you, prove it to yourself. Drop this in the comments right now. I match energy, I don't chase it. 7. Emotional depth versus emotional dependency. Here is the truth most men overlook, and it quietly shapes the outcome of their relationships. Attraction is not built on how much you feel, but on how you handle what you feel. This is where many misunderstand the difference between emotional depth and emotional dependency. They sound similar, but they create completely different experiences for a woman. Emotional depth is powerful, it is calm, it is grounded. It is the ability to recognize your feelings, to express them clearly, and to remain steady while doing so. Emotional dependency, on the other hand, is pressure. It is the need for reassurance, the need for constant validation, the need for someone else to stabilize your inner world. One draws her in, the other quietly pushes her away. If you want to truly understand psychology tricks, female psychology, and how to fall in love in a way that creates lasting attraction, you must understand this distinction at a deep level. Now, think about this carefully. When she starts to pull back, when her energy shifts, when her responses slow down, what happens inside you? Do you stay centered, or do you start to feel restless? Do you observe the situation, or do you react to it? That moment reveals everything. Because a man with emotional depth feels the shift, acknowledges it, but does not lose himself in it. He remains present. He remains composed. He does not rush to fix, chase, or control. That is what makes him intriguing. That is what creates emotional safety. But a man operating from dependency immediately seeks relief. He texts more. He over-explains. He tries to pull her back in, not because he values her, but because he needs the feeling she gives him. And that difference, subtle as it seems, is everything in female psychology. Be honest with yourself here. This is not about judgment. This is about awareness. Ask yourself a direct question. Are you reacting because you value the connection, or because you are afraid of losing the way she makes you feel about yourself? That is the line between strength and instability. That is the line between attraction and resistance. Many men confuse intensity with connection. They believe that showing more emotion will bring her closer, but that is not how to fall in love works on a deep level. Love grows in space. Love grows in emotional safety. Love grows when both people feel free, not when one person feels responsible for holding the other together. Now, here is where it becomes practical. You must learn how to express yourself without creating pressure. You must learn how to share without seeking rescue. For example, instead of saying, "I really like you and I am afraid of losing you," pause, think, adjust. Say, "I have been in situations where I moved too fast before, and I understand how that can create pressure. Do you feel the difference?" Same honesty, same vulnerability, but completely different energy. The first statement asks her to reassure you. The second shows self-awareness. The first creates responsibility. The second creates connection. This is one of the most powerful psychology tricks you can internalize. Don't rush to be understood. Be clear. Don't seek comfort. Be grounded. Don't hand over your emotional stability. Keep it. That is what allows her to relax around you. Because when a woman senses that you can handle your emotions, she no longer feels the need to manage them for you. That is when attraction deepens. That is when she begins to open up. That is when real connection starts to form. This is the essence of female psychology that many miss. Women are not avoiding men who feel deeply. They are avoiding men who cannot stand on their own emotional ground. And here is the paradox that most men struggle to accept. The moment you stop needing her to feel secure is the moment she begins to feel safe with you. It sounds counterintuitive, but it is true. Security is not created through attachment. It is created through stability. It is created through consistency. It is created through a man who can experience emotion without being controlled by it. That is how to fall in love in a way that builds something real, something lasting, something strong. You must also understand this. Giving her space is not losing her. It is allowing the connection to breathe. It is showing trust. It is showing confidence. When you stay calm while she pulls back, you communicate something powerful without saying a word. You communicate that your world does not collapse without her. You communicate that you choose her, not need her. And that distinction changes everything. So take this seriously. Observe your patterns. Notice your reactions. Refine your responses. This is not about becoming cold or distant. This is about becoming steady. This is about becoming a man who feels deeply but stands firmly, a man who can connect without clinging, a man who understands that attraction grows not from intensity but from emotional control. These are not just ideas. These are real, practical psychology tricks rooted in understanding female psychology and the deeper mechanics of how to fall in love. And remember this above all, you already have the ability to do this. You are not learning something foreign. You are refining something that already exists within you. Trust yourself. Stay grounded. Let things unfold. That is where real attraction lives. 8. Focus on yourself instead of overanalyzing her. Focus on yourself instead of overanalyzing her. That is where everything changes, and you need to hear this clearly. Every minute you spend decoding her texts, replaying her tone, or questioning her distance is a minute you're stealing from your own growth. Let that sink in. You paused your life, even if you didn't admit it out loud. You waited. You hoped. You tried to read signs like they held the answer to your future. Meanwhile, life kept moving. Opportunities passed quietly. Energy drained slowly. And deep down, you started to feel stuck, not because of her, but because you stepped away from your own path. Don't do that again. Don't be that man who forgets his mission just because emotions entered the room. Be the man who stays grounded. Be the man who continues forward no matter what. Go to the gym, not to impress her, not to make her regret anything. Do it because discipline builds you from the inside out. Physical strength becomes mental clarity. Consistency becomes confidence. That is how a high-value man is built, not in moments of comfort, but in moments where he chooses himself again and again. Pursue your goals, not to prove a point, not to win validation. Do it because purpose creates direction, and direction creates power. A man with purpose does not chase attention, he attracts it naturally. That is masculine energy, calm, focused, unshaken. Spend time with people who genuinely value you, not as a strategy, not as a display, but because being around the right people reminds you of who you are. It resets your standards. It strengthens your self-respect. And when your self-respect is strong, everything else begins to align. Build something. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. A business, a skill, a vision, a better version of yourself. Because a man on a mission carries a different presence. He doesn't need to say much. He doesn't need to convince anyone. You feel it, and women feel it too. That is how you attract women without chasing them. That is how a high value man moves through the world quietly, intentionally, powerfully. And listen, give yourself credit. You have already started this journey in ways you might overlook. Maybe you've been working on your habits. Maybe you've been trying to improve. Maybe you've been holding yourself together when things felt uncertain. That matters. That counts. Recognize it. Respect your own effort. Now, here is where it gets interesting. When you shift your focus back to yourself, everything changes in ways you cannot force. When she sees you moving forward, not waiting, not begging, not breaking under pressure, two things happen naturally. One, she notices the difference. She realizes something has shifted. Two, she begins to feel something unexpected safety. Because a man who is centered in himself is predictable in the best way. He is not reactive, he is not unstable. He does not collapse under emotion. And that kind of man is rare. That kind of man feels safe to trust. Understand this paradox deeply. The more you focused on her, the less attractive you became. The more you focus on yourself, the more attractive you become. Not because you are trying to impress, not because you are playing some game, but because you are embodying stability. And stability is not boring. Don't believe that lie. Stability is what people crave but rarely find. It is steady, it is reliable, it is grounded. And in a world full of uncertainty, that becomes magnetic. That is masculine energy at its highest level. Controlled, not chaotic. Present, not desperate. Strong, not loud. You don't have to react to every shift in her behavior. You don't have to match confusion with confusion. Be clear, be calm, be consistent. That is how you stand apart. That is how you attract women without losing yourself in the process. You must also understand something deeper. Her distance is not always rejection. Sometimes it is fear. Fear of losing control, fear of getting hurt, fear of choosing the wrong man again. And when she meets a man who is different, a man who does not chase, who does not crumble, who does not seek validation, it challenges her. It makes her pause. It makes her step back, not because she doesn't feel something, but because she feels more than she expected. And this is where most men fail. They take that step back personally. They panic. They chase harder. Or they disappear completely. Don't do either. Stay grounded. Stay present. Give space without losing your direction. That is strength. That is maturity. Be the man who understands her fear without absorbing it. That is key. You are not responsible for fixing her emotions. You are responsible for managing your own. Be the man who gives her room to process without punishing her for it. But also, don't abandon yourself in the process. Keep building, keep moving, keep growing. That balance is what separates a high value man from the rest. He does not overinvest too early. He does not withdraw out of ego. He stays steady. And that steadiness builds trust over time. You must remember this. Attraction grows in space, not in pressure. Trust grows in consistency, not in intensity. And respect grows when a man respects himself first. So stop watching her every move. Stop trying to figure out what every silence means. Focus on what you can control: your habits, your mindset, your direction, your standards. That is where your power is. And when you operate from that place, everything changes without force. In the end, this is not about tactics. It is not about strategies. It is about who you are becoming: a man who is centered, a man who is disciplined, a man who does not lose himself in the presence of attraction. That is the man who wins, not just in relationships, but in life. And when fear meets that kind of presence, something powerful happens. Fear turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into comfort. And comfort turns into trust. That is how real connection is built. Not through chasing, not through overthinking, but through quiet strength, steady growth, and unshakable self-respect. Hey, it's good to have you here. Listen, here's something you need to carry with you after this video. You cannot force someone to feel safe. You cannot chase fear out of another person's heart. But you can become the kind of man who makes fear fade on its own, not with words, not with pressure, but with consistency, calmness, and self-respect. I know this isn't easy. You've probably been in situations where you gave your best, stayed patient, did everything right, and still didn't get the outcome you wanted. That doesn't mean you lost. It means you're growing. It means you're learning how real connection actually works, not the fantasy version of it. So here's the advice, simple but powerful. Don't lose yourself trying to hold on to someone else. Be interested, yes. Be present, yes. But never become obsessed. Because the moment you cross that line, you're no longer choosing, you're chasing. And when you chase, you give away your power. Stay grounded, stay steady. Be the man who knows his worth, even in uncertainty. That is what creates real attraction. That is what builds something lasting. If this spoke to you, stay with us. There's more coming that will sharpen your mindset and strengthen your approach to relationships. And before you go, drop a comment with the word clarity if this helped you see things differently. I'll see you in the next one. 8 clear signs she wants you to notice her. Psychology tricks. Sometimes, the smallest details tell the biggest story. As the writer Annie Sneen once said, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And when it comes to attraction, that truth matters more than most men realize. In this video, we are uncovering the subtle signs a woman wants you to notice her, the quiet signals, the body language, and the little behaviors that many people dismiss, but that can reveal real interest when you know how to read them. These are not loud or obvious moves. They are soft, deliberate, and easy to overlook. But once you learn to recognize them, everything starts to make sense. What once seemed random begins to look intentional. What once felt confusing becomes clear. So let's get into the signs that may reveal more than words ever could. Number 1. The outfit upgrades around you. The subtle upgrade in how she presents herself when she knows you'll be around. Don't overlook this. Most men do. And that is exactly why they miss what is right in front of them. At first glance, nothing seems dramatic. She isn't suddenly dressing like she's walking a red carpet. She isn't trying to impress the entire room. No, it's quieter than that. More refined. More intentional. Her outfit feels just a little more complete. A little more thoughtful. The colors match better. The fit is sharper. The small details, those almost invisible details, are suddenly handled with care. Her hair might be styled with just a bit more precision. Her posture feels more composed. Her overall presence? Elevated. Not loud. Not forced. Just better. And here's where you must pay attention. Because this is where psychology tricks and female psychology quietly reveal what words often hide. A mature woman does not perform for attention. She refines for meaning. She adjusts for someone specific. And if that someone is you, then what you're seeing is not random. It's intentional energy directed your way. Understand this clearly. Attraction at a mature level is rarely loud. It is selective. It is controlled. It is expressed through effort, not noise. This is what many men fail to grasp when trying to understand how to fall in love or how to recognize when someone is falling for them. They look for obvious signals, big gestures, clear confessions. But that's not how it works here. Not with a woman who has lived, learned, and refined her emotional world. She communicates through calibration, through adjustment, through subtle upgrades that say, "You matter enough for me to try, just a little more." And that is powerful. That is intentional. That is real. In female psychology, this behavior connects deeply to what experts call impression management. But don't let the term confuse you. This isn't manipulation. This isn't pretending. This is alignment. She is aligning how she presents herself with how she feels inside. She wants to be seen by you in her best light. Not a fake version, a refined version, a slightly elevated version that reflects both her self-respect and her interest. And here's the key. She doesn't do this for everyone. She chooses when and where to invest that extra effort. So if you notice that around you, her presence sharpens just a little, you must recognize what's happening. Don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it. See it for what it is, a quiet signal of attraction. Now connect this to another layer of psychology tricks, mate attraction signaling. Humans, whether they admit it or not, naturally present their best selves around someone they are drawn to. It's instinct. It's biology refined by experience. But with a mature woman, it becomes more elegant, more controlled. She's not trying to compete. She's not trying to stand out in a crowd. She's trying to resonate with one person. That is the difference. And that is why her effort feels different. It doesn't scream for attention. It invites awareness. It asks, without words, do you notice? And here's where you must step up. Don't be passive. Don't be oblivious. Be present. That is your role. Because recognizing these subtle shifts is part of mastering how to fall in love with awareness, not confusion. You must train your eye to see what others overlook. You must develop the discipline to notice patterns. Is she more polished when she knows you'll be there? Does her energy feel more intentional in your presence? Does her appearance carry a quiet consistency of effort that doesn't show up the same way in other settings? These are not coincidences. These are signals. But here's the deeper lesson. Don't just observe, respond. Not with exaggerated reactions. Not with over-the-top compliments. Be grounded. Be precise. Acknowledge the effort in a calm, confident way. You look sharp today. Simple, direct, controlled. That is enough. Because what you're doing is confirming that her signal has been received. And in female psychology, that moment matters. When effort is seen, it deepens connection. When effort is ignored, it slowly fades. So don't miss that opportunity. At the same time, don't misunderstand this principle. Don't assume every well-dressed moment is about you. That is where many men go wrong. They jump to conclusions. They project meaning where there is none. That is not strength. That is insecurity disguised as confidence. Instead, observe consistency. Look for patterns over time. That is how you stay grounded. That is how you apply psychology tricks with clarity, not assumption. And here's the truth you must accept. Attraction is built in layers. Not in one moment. Not in one glance. Not in one outfit. But in repeated, consistent signals that slowly form a clear picture. This is one of those layers. A subtle one, but a meaningful one. And when combined with other signs, eye contact, proximity, tone of voice, it becomes undeniable. That is how you read the situation like a man who understands both psychology tricks and female psychology at a deeper level. So don't rush. Don't force meaning. But don't ignore what's there either. Be aware. Be steady. Be observant. Because mastering how to fall in love or how to recognize when someone is falling for you is not about chasing signals. It's about becoming the kind of man who can see them clearly, interpret them calmly, and respond with quiet confidence. That is the difference. That is the edge. And that is how you stop missing what others never even notice. Number 2, the way she lingers when it's time to leave. The way she lingers when it's time to leave. Understand this clearly. Goodbyes are rarely just about leaving. They are emotional checkpoints, quiet moments where truth slips through without effort. When a woman lingers, even for a few seconds longer than necessary, she is revealing something deeper than words. Don't ignore it. Don't rush past it. That pause is not accidental. That is intention wrapped in subtlety. While others say goodbye quickly and move on, she slows down. She stretches the moment. She gives time a chance to breathe between you and her. Maybe she asks one last small question. Maybe she adds a light comment that doesn't really matter on the surface, but that's the point. It's not about the words. It's about staying connected just a little longer. Be aware of the details. Be the man who notices what others overlook. She might take her time gathering her things, adjusting her bag, checking something twice, not because she needs to, but because she's not ready to break the moment. That is emotional hesitation. That is quiet attachment forming. And if you are a high value man, you recognize that hesitation not as uncertainty, but as interest. You don't chase it. You don't call it out. You simply hold your presence. Calm, grounded, unshaken. That is masculine energy at its finest, steady, aware, and in control without force. Sometimes she walks beside you a little slower than usual. Pay attention to that rhythm. People who want to leave don't slow down, they speed up. But she doesn't. She matches your pace, or even draws it out. That is her way of saying, without saying, I enjoy this space with you. And here is where many men fail. They rush. They break the moment. They turn a meaningful pause into an ordinary exit. Don't do that. Be still. Let the silence exist. Let the space between words carry weight. As the philosopher Lao Tzu once said, silence is a source of great strength. That silence during a lingering goodbye, that is where attraction quietly deepens. You must understand this. Attraction is not built in grand gestures. It is built in these micro moments. The way she looks back after saying goodbye, that second glance, that lingering smile that lasts just a bit longer than necessary. These are not random behaviors. These are signals, soft but precise. And a man who can attract women consistently is not the loudest in the room. He is the most observant. He reads energy, not just words. He understands timing, not just action. That is masculine energy. Controlled, patient, intentional. In group settings, this becomes even more revealing. Watch closely. She may be ready to leave. Her body might even signal it, bag in hand, steps angled toward the door. But she stays. Why? Because you're still there. Because the conversation hasn't ended for her yet. She waits until you finish speaking. She delays her exit just enough to maintain that invisible thread between you and her. That is not coincidence. That is emotional investment, expressed quietly. A high-value man doesn't ignore that. He doesn't overreact either. He simply acknowledges it internally and continues to lead the interaction with calm confidence. Even something as simple as a drawn-out bye carries meaning. Listen to tone. Feel the energy behind it. A quick bye closes a door. A slow, soft bye leaves it slightly open. That is the difference. And when she adds a soft laugh before leaving, understand this. It's not about humor. It's about comfort. She feels at ease. She feels connected. And she doesn't want that feeling to end abruptly. That is how emotional attraction grows, not through pressure, but through presence. Don't make the mistake of overanalyzing with insecurity. Be grounded in your awareness. If you are constantly questioning, you lose your edge. Instead, observe and respond with calm certainty. If she lingers, you don't need to trap her in conversation. You don't need to impress her. You simply remain present. You let the moment unfold. That is what makes you different. That is what helps you attract women naturally without force or performance. Be a man who understands timing. Don't rush the goodbye. Don't cut it short. But also don't drag it unnaturally. There is an art to this. When she lingers, match her energy, not by copying her, but by allowing space. Let your goodbye be warm, but composed. Let your eye contact hold for a second longer. Let your tone be calm, not eager. That balance is powerful. That balance signals confidence. And confidence, expressed quietly, is one of the strongest forms of masculine energy. Remember this principle. People reveal their true feelings in transitions. Beginnings are often guarded. Middles are often distracted. But endings are honest. That is where masks slip. That is where intention shows. So when she lingers at the end, she is giving you a glimpse of something real. Don't dismiss it. Don't chase it either. Simply recognize it. Let it register. And then continue being the man who is centered, self-controlled, and aware. A high-value man does not beg for attention. He notices when it is freely given. He does not force connection. He allows it to grow. And in moments like this, when she delays her goodbye, when she stretches time just a little longer, you are witnessing the early stages of emotional attachment. Handle it with care. Handle it with patience. That is how you attract women without losing yourself. That is how you embody masculine energy in a way that is calm, steady, and deeply compelling. So next time you say goodbye, don't just hear the word. Watch the pause after it. Feel the energy around it. That slight delay, that is not hesitation. That is interest speaking softly. And if you are paying attention, truly paying attention, you will hear everything she isn't saying. Number 3, the sound of her laughter becomes louder. The sound of her laughter becomes louder, and you must understand this clearly, because this is not random, this is not accidental, this is intentional energy expressed without words. As Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And right here, in the rise of her laughter, she is telling you exactly how you make her feel without ever saying it out loud. So don't overlook it, don't brush it aside. Don't be blind to what is right in front of you. When a mature woman increases the volume of her laughter around you, she is not simply reacting to humor. She is amplifying connection. She is signaling comfort. She is inviting presence. And if you are a man guided by old Stoic wisdom, you will not chase the noise. You will read the meaning behind it. Understand this. A woman who feels nothing will remain neutral, composed, measured. But a woman who feels drawn to you will allow her energy to expand. She will let her guard soften. She will let her laughter travel just a little farther. Just enough for you to notice, just enough to create a subtle pull. And that is where most men fail. They hear the laughter but miss the message. They react to the surface but ignore the depth. That is why you must develop an iron mind, because perception is power. Awareness is advantage, and the man who sees what others overlook is the man who wins. Now listen carefully. It's not about whether your joke was extraordinary. It's not about whether the moment was objectively funny. It's about how she chooses to respond when you are present. Because her laughter becomes a tool, a signal, a quiet invitation. If you pay attention, you will notice the pattern. She laughs a little longer. She leans in slightly. Her tone becomes warmer. Her rhythm becomes lighter. And suddenly, the atmosphere around you shifts, not dramatically, not loudly, but unmistakably. And this is where Stoicism win becomes your advantage, because instead of reacting impulsively, instead of trying too hard, instead of seeking validation, you remain grounded, you remain centered, you observe, you understand. And then you respond with calm confidence. Remember what Marcus Aurelius taught. You have power over your mind, not outside events. And her laughter, as beautiful as it is still an external signal. So don't lose yourself in it. Don't become reactive. Don't start performing for it, because the moment you chase her laughter, you lose the very energy that attracted it in the first place. Be steady, be composed, be present, because a high-value man does not entertain to impress. He exists in a way that naturally draws people in, and her laughter is simply a reflection of that presence. In modern life, where distractions are everywhere, where conversations are shallow, where attention is scattered, a genuine emotional response stands out more than ever. So when a woman laughs more freely around you, when her energy lifts in your presence, understand that you are creating something rare, something real. And that is not something you force. That is something you allow, something you cultivate through authenticity, through calm strength, through an iron mind that is not shaken by external reactions. Here is your instruction. Do not interrupt her energy. Do not overanalyze in the moment. Do not try to escalate too quickly. Instead, hold your frame. Maintain your pace. Let the connection breathe, because attraction grows in space, not pressure. And when she feels that you are not trying to control the moment, not trying to impress, not trying to prove anything, her comfort deepens, her laughter becomes more natural, more effortless, more genuine. And that is when emotional attraction begins to root itself deeply. Repeat this in your mind. Notice the shift. Respect the signal. Remain grounded. Because this is how a man aligned with old Stoic wisdom moves through attraction. This is how Stoicism win is applied in real life. This is how you build an iron mind that does not react to every stimulus, but instead understands, interprets, and responds with precision. And never forget, attraction is not built on loud declarations. It is built on subtle consistency, on quiet signals, on moments like this, where her laughter carries just a little further when you are around. If you can recognize it, if you can stay centered within it, if you can avoid the trap of overreaction, then you are no longer guessing, you are no longer hoping, you are leading the emotional direction of the interaction with clarity, with calm, with purpose. And that is the difference between a man who chases attention and a man who naturally attracts it. Number 4. The quick glances she throws when she thinks you're not looking. The quick glances she throws when she thinks you're not looking. Don't underestimate this. Don't brush it off as coincidence. Because sometimes the smallest movements reveal the deepest intentions. A woman who has lived, who has experienced enough of life to understand her own emotions, does not always announce her interest loudly. No, she moves with subtlety. She observes first. She feels first. And those quick glances? That is where everything begins. That is where curiosity quietly turns into connection. Sometimes the quickest glances carry the most weight. They are fast, almost invisible, but they are not meaningless. They come from a place of curiosity, a spark of interest, even a quiet attraction she is not yet ready to show openly. Think about it. In a meeting, she looks up from her work, not long, not obvious, just enough to check what you're doing. Then the moment you shift your attention toward her, she looks away, fast, controlled, as if nothing happened. But something did happen. That is not random. That is awareness. That is interest trying to stay hidden. In a group setting, it becomes even clearer if you know what to look for. Everyone is talking. Voices overlap. Energy moves around the room. But her eyes? They return to you. Again and again. Not in a fixed stare, not in a way that exposes her, but in soft, repeated glances, like her attention is quietly pulled in your direction without her permission. That is the key. Attraction often begins unconsciously. She may not even fully understand why she keeps looking, but she does, and that matters. If you are across the room, the pattern continues. She steals a glance, then quickly shifts her focus, maybe to her phone, maybe to someone else, maybe to nothing at all. It is a natural defense, a way of protecting her interest before she decides if it is safe to reveal it. You must understand this. A mature woman does not rush into showing attraction. She measures. She observes. She studies your presence, your energy, your reactions. That is why these glances are so valuable. They are unfiltered. They happen before logic steps in. Even in passing moments, those brief seconds when you walk by each other, watch carefully. She might take a quick look at your face. Not long enough to start a conversation. Not long enough to be obvious. Just a flicker of attention. Then she keeps moving as if nothing happened. But that flicker tells a story. That is her mind registering you. That is her awareness locking onto your presence, even if just for a second. These glances are always short, almost accidental in appearance. That is what makes them powerful, because anything too obvious can be controlled. But these are natural, unplanned. And when they happen repeatedly, they are never random. Never. Patterns reveal truth. One glance means nothing. Repeated glances mean everything. Now listen carefully. Don't chase the glance. Don't react too quickly. That is where most men fail. They notice the signal, then immediately try to force something out of it. Don't do that. Be calm. Be centered. Be the man who understands that attraction grows in space, not pressure. This is where your masculine energy comes into play. Quiet, steady, grounded. You must hold your frame. A high-value man does not panic when he senses interest. He does not overanalyze. He does not rush. He observes right back, but with control. If she glances, you don't immediately lock eyes every time. That feels reactive. Instead, you create moments, occasional eye contact, a calm presence, a subtle acknowledgement that you see her, but you are not chasing her. That balance? That is what begins to attract women on a deeper level. Understand this deeply. Attraction is not built on what is said first. It is built on what is felt before anything is said. Those glances are feelings trying to find direction. And your job is not to interrupt that process. Your job is to allow it to grow. Slowly, naturally, powerfully. Be aware, but don't be eager. That is the difference. Eagerness breaks the mystery. Awareness builds it. A high-value man knows how to stay composed in moments like this. He lets her curiosity expand. He lets her wonder. Does he notice me? Is he interested? That space of uncertainty is where attraction deepens. And here is something most men completely miss. When she keeps looking at you, she is already investing attention. Attention is the first currency of attraction. Before words, before touch, before anything else. If she gives you that, even in small doses, it means something inside her is already engaged. But don't misunderstand. This is not a guarantee. It is an invitation, a subtle one. And you must respond with the same level of subtlety. That is where your masculine energy becomes magnetic. Not loud, not aggressive, but calm, observant, and intentional. Don't stare. Don't overreact. Don't try to catch her looking. That creates pressure. Instead, move naturally. Carry yourself with purpose. Let her see you being present, engaged, and grounded in your own world. That is what truly attracts women, not desperation for attention, but comfort without it. That is how a high-value man moves. He does not need constant validation. He does not need obvious signals. He understands that real attraction often whispers before it speaks. So when you notice those quick glances, don't ignore them. But don't chase them either. Recognize them. Respect them. And most importantly, match them with calm confidence. That is how you turn a moment of curiosity into something much deeper. Because in the end, it is never just about the glance. It is about what the glance represents. Interest, curiosity, possibility. And if you handle it right, with patience, awareness, and strong masculine energy, you don't just notice attraction. You begin to attract women in a way that feels natural, effortless, and real. If you understand this, then don't ignore it. Notice the small signals, read between the lines, and act with awareness. That's how a high-value man moves. That's how you truly attract women, through presence, not pressure. So if you're ready to see what others miss, drop this in the comments right now. I notice what others overlook. Like the video, subscribe for more real insight, and remember, attraction doesn't shout, it whispers. Number 5. The movement becomes a little more calculated. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when attraction stops being accidental and becomes intentional, and if you don't train your eye, you will miss it every single time. This is where a man with awareness separates himself from the rest, because as Marcus Aurelius once reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And that strength begins with seeing what others overlook. When a mature woman starts to become more calculated in her movements around you, that is not coincidence. That is choice. That is awareness. That is interest expressed through discipline rather than noise. And you must understand this clearly. She is no longer just existing in your presence. She is adjusting herself within it, refining how she shows up. And that shift, subtle as it may seem, carries weight. Her posture becomes more deliberate, her movement slower, smoother, more composed, not because she is pretending, but because she is choosing. And choice is always more powerful than impulse. This is where old Stoic wisdom speaks directly to you. Control what you can control and observe what others reveal through theirs. When she stands a little straighter, when her walk becomes measured instead of rushed, when she positions herself where you can see her without making it obvious, she is communicating without words. And you must be the man who understands that language. Do not ignore it. Do not overreact to it. Simply recognize it with calm certainty, because this is where your iron mind is tested, not in what you say, but in what you notice and how you respond. A woman who adjusts her presence around you is investing attention. And attention is the most valuable currency in human connection, far more than money, far more than status, far more than surface-level charm. She may fix her hair when you enter the space, smooth her clothes as you get closer, subtly refine her appearance as if aligning herself with the moment. And here is the truth. You are part of that moment. This is not performance for the world. This is calibration for you. Even the way she sits changes, more composed, more intentional, less distracted, because now she is aware. And awareness creates structure, and structure reveals interest. You must not be blind to this, because most men are. And that is why they lose opportunities they never even realized they had. This is why Stoicism win is not just a phrase, it is a way of seeing, a way of understanding human behavior without being controlled by it. Do not chase. Do not rush. Do not break your frame trying to react. Observe. Stay grounded. Stay centered. Let your presence remain steady and unshaken, because attraction grows strongest in calm environments, not chaotic ones. Remember what Seneca taught: he who is brave is free. And bravery, in this context, means emotional control, the ability to witness signals without becoming desperate or impulsive. When you see her movements become more intentional, you do not pounce. You do not question yourself. You do not seek validation. You simply understand, and then you lead with quiet confidence. Be the man who matches her intentionality with presence, not pressure. Speak clearly. Move calmly. Hold eye contact just long enough to acknowledge, not to chase. This is how an iron mind operates. It does not react wildly. It responds with precision. And in modern life, where distractions are everywhere and attention is fragmented, a man who can remain focused, observant, and composed becomes rare. And rarity creates attraction. Understand this deeply. She is not just adjusting her movements. She is revealing her priorities. And when someone prioritizes how they show up around you, they are telling you, without saying a word, that you matter in that moment. Do not waste that signal. Do not misread it. And most importantly, do not become careless with it. Because attraction built on subtlety requires respect, awareness, and patience. You must be patient enough to let the dynamic unfold, disciplined enough to not sabotage it with neediness, and confident enough to trust what you see. This is where old Stoic wisdom becomes practical, not theoretical. Focus on your actions, your presence, your control, and let her signals guide the rhythm, not dictate your worth. Repeat this to yourself. Notice more, react less, lead calmly. Notice more, react less, lead calmly. Notice more, react less, lead calmly. This is how you build real connection, not forced attraction. And when you master this, when you truly internalize this level of awareness, you stop guessing. You stop chasing. You start understanding. That is the shift. That is the power. That is Stoicism win in real life. So when you see her movements become more calculated, more refined, more intentional, do not overlook it. Do not question it. Do not rush it. Recognize it. Respect it. And rise to meet it with the same level of control, because that is what separates a man who hopes from a man who knows. And a man who knows always moves with an iron mind. Number 6. The subtle attempts she makes to stand out in a crowd. The subtle attempts she makes to stand out in a crowd, and if you miss this, you're missing one of the clearest signals in female psychology, one of those quiet psychology tricks that reveal far more than words ever could. You walk into a room, nothing dramatic happens, no grand gesture, no loud greeting, yet something shifts. She adjusts, just slightly. She sits up straighter, aligns her posture, lifts her chin just enough to enter your field of vision. That is not random. That is intention, controlled and quiet. A mature woman does not compete for attention loudly. She positions herself strategically. Be aware of that. Don't expect obvious signals. Don't wait for exaggerated behavior. Instead, train your eyes to notice refinement, because that is where how to fall in love truly begins, not in noise, but in subtle alignment. You must understand this. Attraction at this stage of life is not chaotic. It is deliberate. When she chooses to speak, it is not because she suddenly found her voice. It is because she knows you are listening. That is timing. That is awareness. That is female psychology in motion. She may be quiet with others, reserved even, but when you are present, she finds reasons to contribute, to engage, to let her presence be felt just enough. Don't ignore that shift. That is not coincidence. That is focus. And focus is one of the strongest indicators of interest. Watch the details. Always watch the details. The way she adjusts her hair when she notices you nearby. The way she smooths her outfit subtly without drawing attention. These are not acts of vanity, they are acts of readiness. She is aligning herself with the moment, preparing to be seen, but on her terms. That is the difference between attention-seeking and intentional presence. One is loud and scattered. The other is quiet and precise. A high-value man understands this distinction. He doesn't chase noise, he reads signals. He observes patterns. He sees what others overlook. In a group setting, her movement becomes even more telling. She doesn't invade your space, she doesn't force proximity, but somehow, naturally, she ends up closer. Not by accident, but by design. She positions herself within your orbit, giving you the opportunity to notice her without ever asking for it. That is elegance. That is control. That is one of the oldest psychology tricks rooted deeply in female psychology, creating visibility without vulnerability. And if you're paying attention, if you truly understand how to fall in love through awareness and presence, you will see the pattern forming. Because none of these actions stand out on their own. That is the key. One movement means nothing. One glance can be dismissed. One adjustment is easy to ignore. But together, they form consistency. And consistency is truth. Don't dismiss patterns. Don't rationalize them away. Don't tell yourself it's coincidence. A mature woman does not repeat behavior without reason. She invests her energy carefully, and if she is investing it around you, even subtly, that is a signal you cannot afford to overlook. Be sharp. Be observant. Be present. Because most men fail here, they look for clarity in loud expressions, when the real message is written in quiet repetition. And here's the deeper layer you must understand. She is testing awareness, not just attraction. She wants to know if you can see beyond the surface, if you can read the room, if you can recognize intention without being told. That is how a woman decides if a man is worth her attention, not by what he says, but by what he notices. So don't rush. Don't interrupt the process. Let it unfold. Watch how she enters your space. Watch how she adjusts when you're near. Watch how her energy shifts in your presence. These are not random behaviors. These are signals shaped by experience, guided by emotional intelligence, and rooted in the natural dynamics of human connection. And if you truly want to master how to fall in love, if you want to understand the deeper layers of female psychology and use these psychology tricks wisely, then you must develop one skill above all else: awareness. Because awareness turns confusion into clarity. Awareness turns subtlety into certainty. Awareness is what separates the man who wonders from the man who knows. So don't chase attention. Recognize alignment. Don't demand signals. Decode patterns. And most importantly, don't ignore what is quietly being shown to you, because in the world of attraction, the loudest truths are often spoken in silence. If you understand this, you already see what most men completely miss. Because attraction is not loud. It is subtle. It is intentional. It shows up in the small adjustments, the quiet effort, the moments she chooses to be seen, just by you. Don't ignore it. Pay attention. That is where real connection begins. Now, if you're ready to become the man who notices what others overlook, drop this in the comments. I see what others don't. Number 7. The I didn't see you there act. The I didn't see you there act. Gentlemen, don't underestimate this moment, because what looks small on the surface is often loaded with intention underneath. You must learn to read between the lines. She walks past you as if she's completely absorbed in her own world, her attention somewhere else, her energy seemingly unavailable. No eye contact. No acknowledgement. Nothing. And then, almost like a perfectly timed scene, she notices you. A slight pause. A soft shift in expression. Maybe a quick smile. Maybe a gentle, oh hey, as if your presence just entered her awareness. But here's the truth. That moment is rarely accidental. That is a choice. That is timing. That is awareness being used with precision. In the world of psychology tricks and female psychology, this is a subtle but powerful move. She is not ignoring you. She is creating contrast. She is turning a neutral encounter into a memorable one. And you must understand this clearly. Attraction often lives in contrast, not in constant attention. When something appears too easy, too available, too predictable, it fades into the background. But when there is a slight delay, a small emotional shift, a controlled reveal, it creates curiosity. It creates tension. It makes you feel something. That is how to fall in love begins, not with grand gestures, but with small emotional sparks that stay in your mind longer than they should. Don't dismiss it. Don't rush past it. Observe it. Because what she is doing is managing perception. In psychology, this is known as impression management. She is deciding when to enter your awareness, and more importantly, how. And that how is everything. It feels natural. It feels unforced. It feels real. But underneath, it is carefully timed. Not manipulative. Not calculated in a negative way. Just aware. Just intentional. That is the difference. A mature woman doesn't chase attention loudly. She creates moments quietly. She doesn't need to demand your focus. She earns it by making you notice her without understanding why. And this is where many men miss the signal completely. They see the surface and ignore the depth. They assume coincidence when it is actually communication. You must not make that mistake. Be present. Be aware. When she creates that small delay before acknowledging you, she is giving you a window, a moment to step in, a moment to respond with calm confidence, not excitement, not confusion, calm presence. Because this is not a test you pass with words. It is a moment you match with energy. Stay grounded. Hold eye contact. Give a slight smile back. Nothing exaggerated. Nothing forced. That is how you meet her at the same level of awareness she is operating on. Because if you overreact, you break the balance. If you underreact, you miss the connection. You must stay centered. This is where understanding female psychology becomes a real advantage. Because these moments are not random. They are signals. Soft signals. Indirect signals. But signals nonetheless. And when you begin to recognize them, you start to see a different layer of interaction that most men never notice. You begin to understand how to fall in love is not about chasing feelings, but about recognizing patterns of connection. Small patterns, repeated patterns, subtle patterns. And this is one of them. She creates a moment, a pause, a shift. And in that shift, she invites awareness. She invites curiosity. She invites you to see her, not just physically, but emotionally. That is powerful. That is intentional. And that is where real attraction begins to grow. Don't rush it. Don't question it too much. Just recognize it. Because when a woman chooses the moment to notice you, she is also choosing to let you notice her. And that, gentleman, is not something you ignore. That is something you understand, respect, and respond to with quiet confidence. Number 8, the indirect conversations that pop up often. The indirect conversations that seem to appear out of nowhere, and yet, if you are sharp, if you are aware, you will realize they are not random at all. They are intentional, quiet invitations wrapped in subtlety. This is where many men fail, not because they lack value, but because they lack attention. Don't miss this. A mature woman rarely throws herself into obvious pursuit. She moves with grace, with awareness, with emotional intelligence shaped by experience. Instead of approaching you directly, she orbits your space. She joins conversations you are already part of. She speaks to your friends, but her energy leans toward you. She says things just loud enough, just clear enough, knowing you will hear. That is not coincidence. That is design. That is female psychology at work. You must understand this. Attraction at this level is rarely loud. It is precise, controlled, and deeply intentional. She may bring up topics she knows will spark your interest. She may mention something she knows you care about. She may even position her words in a way that creates a natural opening for you to step in. And here is where many men hesitate. They wait for certainty. They wait for clarity. They wait for her to make it obvious. Don't. Be decisive. Be aware. Be present. Because what she is offering you is not confusion, it is opportunity. These are psychology tricks rooted in human behavior, where risk is minimized and connection is invited without exposure. She is not avoiding you, she is giving you space to lead. That is the difference. In How to Fall in Love, especially with a mature woman, you must recognize that emotional safety matters. She is not going to gamble her dignity on a direct move unless she feels secure. So instead, she creates a bridge, a soft, invisible bridge. And your role is to see it and walk across it with calm confidence. Don't overthink it. Don't analyze it to death. Simply engage. If she joins your group, include her. If she speaks within your hearing range, respond. If she opens a topic you care about, step in naturally. That is all it takes. But you must be aware enough to act. This is where psychology tricks and female psychology intersect in a powerful way. She signals interest without demanding response, and you are invited to lead without pressure. It is a dance, not a chase. And if you hesitate too long, if you ignore these openings, she will not wait forever. She will withdraw quietly, assuming you are either uninterested or unaware. And both are equally unattractive. That is why you must sharpen your perception. You must train yourself to notice patterns, not just moments. One indirect conversation means little, but repeated proximity, repeated alignment, repeated subtle invitations, that is a pattern. That is intention. That is her moving closer, step by step, without risking rejection. And this is where emotional intelligence becomes your greatest advantage. Don't be the man who needs obvious signs. Be the man who understands nuance. Be the man who sees what others overlook. Because in How to Fall in Love, especially at a deeper level, it is not about grand gestures, it is about quiet recognition. She is watching how you respond. She is observing whether you step forward or stay passive. She is measuring your awareness, your confidence, your ability to read the moment. And make no mistake, this is part of attraction. A man who can read subtle signals and respond calmly is a man who feels safe, grounded, and emotionally strong. That is what draws her in. Not noise, not force, but presence. So when she speaks near you, don't ignore it. When she aligns herself with your space, don't dismiss it. When she creates an opening, don't hesitate. Step in. Speak naturally. Keep it light, but be intentional. Because every small interaction builds momentum. And momentum is what transforms curiosity into connection, and connection into something deeper. These psychology tricks are not manipulation. They are natural human behaviors shaped by emotion and experience. And when you understand female psychology at this level, you stop guessing, you stop doubting, and you start moving with clarity. That is the shift. That is the power. And that is how to fall in love in a way that feels effortless, mutual, and real. If you made it this far, that already says something about you. You're not here for surface level advice. You're here to understand, to grow, and to become a man who doesn't just attract attention, but commands respect without even trying. That is rare. That is power. So if this video gave you a new perspective, even just one insight that made you pause and think differently, go ahead and hit like, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. This isn't just content. It's a process of sharpening who you are, step by step, decision by decision. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these touches stood out the most to you? Which one made you realize something about your own behavior, or maybe something you've been overlooking? Or maybe you've experienced this in real life and have your own story to tell. Don't keep it to yourself. Drop it in the comments. Your perspective might be exactly what another man needs to hear right now. Before you go, leave this statement in the comments as a commitment to yourself. I don't chase, I attract by becoming better. Not to impress anyone, but to remind yourself of the standard you're choosing to live by. And remember this, a mature woman isn't moved by noise, by effort that feels forced, or by empty words. She is drawn to calm confidence, consistency, and depth. Don't try to impress. Become someone worth noticing. Until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and never forget, when you master yourself, you stop chasing, and the right things start coming to you. Do these 8 things when you hug a woman to make her want you more. Psychology tricks. Love does not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Look, by the time you hug her, she is already feeling something about you. Long before the conversation is judged, long before your words have a chance to impress or disappoint, her body is already reading your energy. One hug can say more than a full hour of talking. One moment of contact can create warmth, tension, comfort, or complete emptiness. That is why so many men get confused. They think attraction is built only through what they say, while completely missing what they communicate without a single word. The truth is simple. A hug is never just a hug. It is a signal. It tells her whether you feel grounded or uncertain, calm or needy, present or disconnected. And most men ruin that moment without even realizing it. Not because they are bad men, but because nobody ever taught them what that kind of closeness really communicates. Over the years, I have studied how women respond to subtle emotional and physical cues, and what I am about to unpack comes from that deeper layer of human behavior most people overlook. These are not cheap games, and they are not magic moves. They are natural psychological responses tied to emotion, safety, tension, and connection. When you understand them, the difference is immediate. She feels it, she notices it, she remembers it. So pay close attention, because missing even one small detail can weaken the moment more than you think. And if you are the kind of man who wants to understand attraction, emotional presence, and human nature on a deeper level than the average guy ever will, then stay with me, because this is where surface level advice ends and real insight begins. 1. The cheek graze effect. Now, listen closely, because this is where most men completely miss the moment without even realizing it. The cheek graze effect. This is subtle, almost invisible, yet it carries more emotional weight than anything loud or obvious. As you begin to release the hug, don't rush it. Don't pull away like you're escaping. Be present. Be deliberate. Slightly turn your head just enough so that your cheek gently brushes against hers. That is it. No force, no intention to impress, just a soft, natural movement, like you almost had something to say but chose restraint instead. And that restraint, that quiet control, is exactly what makes this one of the most powerful psychology tricks rooted in real female psychology and how to fall in love. Understand this: the face is personal territory. People don't casually allow access to it. When your cheek lightly grazes hers, you step into a space that is reserved only for those she feels safe with, those she trusts, those she feels emotionally close to, even if she hasn't consciously admitted it yet. That is why this moment hits differently. It bypasses logic. It goes straight to emotion. And emotion is where attraction lives. Don't overdo it. Don't exaggerate the movement. That kills it. Subtlety is your strength here. Precision is your power. You must make it feel unplanned yet undeniable. And here's what happens next. Whether she tells you or not, her mind starts working, quietly, rapidly. She replays that moment again and again. She asks herself, did he mean that? That question is everything. Because now, instead of you chasing her attention, her mind is chasing the meaning between your action. That is one of the most overlooked psychology truths when it comes to female psychology and how to fall in love. You are no longer just another interaction in her day. You become a moment, a question, a feeling she didn't expect. Don't talk your way through this. Don't explain it. Don't ruin it with unnecessary words. Silence, when used correctly, is more powerful than any line you could ever deliver. Let that small moment breathe. Let it exist without interference, because the mystery is what gives it life. The uncertainty is what makes it replay in her mind. If you try to control it too much, you lose it. If you stay grounded, calm, and intentional, you amplify it. Now, think about the shift this creates. Before that moment, you were just a guy she was interacting with, friendly, normal, predictable. After that moment, something changes. You become memorable, not because you tried harder, but because you felt different. That is the key. Attraction is not built on effort alone, it is built on emotional contrast, on moments that stand out, on experiences that feel just slightly outside the ordinary. And this simple cheek graze effect does exactly that when done right. You'll notice the difference if you pay attention. She may start standing a little closer next time. She may hold eye contact just a second longer. She may become more aware of your presence. That is not random. That is the seed you planted starting to grow. And seeds don't grow through force, they grow through patience, consistency, and the right environment. This is where most men fail. They try to escalate too quickly after creating a moment. Don't do that. Let it unfold. Let her come toward you emotionally. Remember this, in female psychology and how to fall in love, it's not about overwhelming her with intensity. It's about creating small, meaningful moments that feel safe, intriguing, and just slightly unfinished. That unfinished feeling is what keeps her thinking about you later. That is why this works. Not because it's flashy, not because it's obvious, but because it leaves space for her imagination to fill in the gaps. And here's your rule: be calm, always calm. Your energy must say, I'm in control of myself, not in a rigid way, but in a grounded, effortless way. When you move slowly, when you don't rush away, when you allow that soft contact to happen naturally, you communicate confidence without saying a word. That is the kind of signal that lands deeply. That is the kind of signal that stays with her long after the moment ends. So don't underestimate this. Don't dismiss it as something small. The smallest actions, when done with awareness, create the biggest emotional impact. This is not about manipulation. This is about understanding human connection at a deeper level. It's about knowing how subtle cues shape perception. And when you understand that, you stop guessing. You start moving with intention. Use this wisely. Keep it natural, keep it respectful, and most importantly, keep it real. Because when your actions align with a calm, centered presence, these psychology tricks stop being tricks and start becoming part of who you are. Second, the grounded stillness. And this is where most men quietly lose the moment without even realizing it. Because the truth is simple: most men don't know how to be still. They fidget, they adjust their hands, they shift their weight, they overthink the moment instead of living in it. And a woman feels that instantly, not with her mind, but with her body. Don't ignore this. Don't brush it off as something small. That restless movement signals uncertainty. It whispers, I'm not fully here. And that breaks the emotional connection before it even has a chance to grow. But when you do the opposite, when you hold her and your body becomes still, calm, grounded, rooted, it creates a completely different experience. That is where a high value man separates himself from the rest. Because stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is control. It is presence. It is quiet confidence without the need to prove anything. When your body is steady, you are communicating something powerful without saying a word. I am in control, I am present, I am not nervous. That is masculine energy in its purest form: calm, centered, and unshaken. Be aware of this. Be intentional. Your stillness is not passive, it is active control. It is the discipline of choosing not to move when your instincts tell you to fidget. It is the ability to sit in the moment without trying to fix it, improve it, or escape it. That is rare, and rare is what attracts women. Think about it. In a world where everything is fast, loud, and distracted, a man who can be still feels different. He feels safe. He feels grounded. He feels like a place she can rest. And that is exactly what she is looking for, even if she never says it out loud. When you embody that kind of presence, you don't need clever lines. You don't need to impress. Your energy does the work for you. Don't rush the hug. Don't treat it like a quick formality. Be there. Feel your feet on the ground. Relax your shoulders. Let your breathing slow down naturally. That is how you anchor yourself in the moment. That is how you allow her to feel your presence, not just your touch. Because here's the deeper truth: people don't connect through movement, they connect through feeling. And feeling needs space, it needs stillness. When you're still, she begins to mirror you. Her body softens, her breathing slows, her guard drops without effort. That is not manipulation. That is emotional alignment. That is what happens when your masculine energy is stable enough to lead the moment without force. And this is exactly how you attract women on a deeper level, not through performance, but through presence. Don't misunderstand this. Doing less does not mean doing nothing. It means doing exactly what matters and removing everything that doesn't. Most men try to add more movement, more talking, more effort. But attraction doesn't grow from excess. It grows from precision. It grows from intention. A high value man understands that sometimes the most powerful thing he can do is simply hold still. And here's where it becomes even more important. Stillness requires inner control. If your mind is racing, your body will show it. If you're seeking approval, your movements will betray you. So don't just train your body, train your mindset. Be comfortable in your own presence first, because if you're not at ease with yourself, you will never feel at ease with her. Be the man who doesn't need to fill every second with action. Be the man who can stand in silence and still feel powerful. That is masculine energy at its highest level, not loud, not forced, but undeniable. When you master this, you stop chasing reactions. You start creating them naturally. And remember this: energy doesn't lie. You can say all the right words, but if your body is restless, she will feel the disconnect. On the other hand, you can say nothing at all, and if your presence is grounded, she will feel drawn to you without understanding why. That is the difference between surface level attraction and deep emotional pull. So the next time you hug her, don't rush, don't fidget, don't overthink. Be still, be grounded, be present. Let your body speak with certainty. Let your calmness guide the moment. Because when you are steady, she begins to trust. When you are rooted, she begins to relax. And when you master that level of control, you don't just attract women, you create a feeling they don't want to walk away from. If this hit you, then you already know. Power isn't in movement, it's in control. Most men try too hard. You don't. You stay grounded. You stay still. That's what sets you apart. So drop this in the comments right now. I move less, but I mean more. Like the video, subscribe for more sharp, real insight, and remember, stillness isn't hesitation, it's quiet power. Third, hold her half a second longer than she expects. That line sounds simple, almost too simple, but don't underestimate it. That is where everything shifts. That is where a regular moment turns into something she remembers. Most men treat a hug like a formality: quick in, quick out, like checking a box. No presence, no intention, no weight behind it. Don't do that. Don't rush. Don't treat the moment like it doesn't matter, because that extra half second, that is where your intention speaks louder than any word you've ever said. And intention is what allows a high-value man to stand apart without trying too hard. Be aware of what happens in that tiny pause. First, she notices something is different. Oh, he's still holding me. That is the spark. Then her mind leans in, just a little. Does he actually like this? That is curiosity. And curiosity is powerful. It pulls people in. It makes them want to understand you, feel you, stay near you. Then comes the shift you cannot fake: the warmth, the subtle emotional response, the quiet flutter in her chest. That is not something you force. That is something you allow. That is how you attract women without chasing, without performing, without saying a single extra word. Most men miss this because they are too busy being in their own heads. They hug, but they are thinking, am I doing this right? Is this too long? Is this weird? And so they pull away too fast, too safe, too predictable. Don't do that. Don't move from fear. Don't act like you need permission to exist in the moment because she feels that hesitation instantly. She may not explain it, but she feels it. And when she feels that nervous, rushed energy, something inside her quietly steps back. Attraction fades, interest cools. The moment dies before it even had a chance to breathe. Now, understand this clearly. Holding her half a second longer is not about being clingy. It is not about overstaying. It is about being present. It is about being intentional. There is a difference. A high value man does not grab or hold on awkwardly. He doesn't linger in a way that feels forced. He simply stays for that extra beat, calm, grounded, unshaken. That is masculine energy in its purest form. Not loud, not aggressive, just steady, just certain. Be the man who is comfortable in silence. Be the man who does not rush moments that matter. That extra half second tells her, I'm here. I'm not in a hurry to escape. I'm not afraid of connection. And that is rare. That is what makes her pause. That is what makes her think about you later when she is alone. Because most interactions in life feel rushed, shallow, forgettable. But when someone slows down just enough to actually feel the moment, it stands out. It lingers. And here is where it gets even deeper. That half second is not just about her. It is about you. It is about your internal state. If you are calm, she feels calm. If you are grounded, she feels grounded. If you are confident, she feels safe. That is how masculine energy works. It is not something you say, it is something you transmit. So don't fake it. Don't try to act confident. Build that inner stillness. Because when it is real, you don't need to think about timing. Your body naturally knows when to stay, when to release. Most guys pull away like they are diffusing a bomb, quick, careful, almost apologetic. That is not attractive. That feels like uncertainty, and uncertainty breaks emotional tension in the wrong way. But when you hold her just a little longer, without tension, without stiffness, without overthinking, you create a different kind of tension, a good one, a quiet one, the kind that makes her feel something without knowing exactly why. That is how you attract women on a deeper level, not just physically, but emotionally. Be clear. You are not asking for permission with your actions. You are expressing yourself. I know what I want, and I'm not ashamed of it. That is the message. Not through words, but through presence, through stillness, through that extra half second that most men are too afraid to take. That is what separates the forgettable from the unforgettable. That is what separates the man she smiles at from the man she thinks about later. And here is the truth many don't realize. Women don't remember perfect technique. They remember how you made them feel. That extra moment of connection, that subtle pause, that quiet confidence, it leaves a mark. It becomes a feeling she cannot easily explain, but she wants to feel it again. That is why the high value man doesn't chase attention. He creates experiences. Small ones, simple ones, but real. So next time, don't rush the hug. Don't treat it like something to get through. Be there. Feel it. Let the moment breathe. Hold her just half a second longer than she expects, and then let go naturally, without hesitation, without second guessing. That is control. That is awareness. That is masculine energy in action. And understand this, the power is not in the length of the hug, it is in the intention behind it. A rushed 3-second hug feels empty. A present 2-second hug feels meaningful. That extra half second, that is the bridge between the two. That is where emotion lives. That is where connection grows. So don't underestimate small details. Don't ignore subtle moments, because those are the moments that build attraction quietly, deeply, and naturally. Be patient. Be intentional. Be the man who doesn't need to rush away from connection. Because when you master that, you don't need tricks. You don't need lines. You don't need to perform. You simply show up as a high value man, and the right energy follows. Fourth, the clean release. Eighth, the clean release. And this is where most men quietly lose the impact they just created, because how you end the hug matters just as much as how you start it, maybe even more. Think about it. A great moment can collapse in seconds if the exit feels unsure. And women, whether they realize it or not, are highly tuned to these subtle shifts through female psychology. So don't overlook this. Most guys break away awkwardly. They hesitate like they're asking, should I stay or should I go? And that hesitation creates tension. Or they linger too long, holding on as if they're afraid the moment will disappear, and that signals neediness. Or worse, they pull back too fast, like they're uncomfortable, like they didn't fully own the moment, and that breaks the emotional flow completely. Don't do that. Don't rush, don't cling, don't drift. Be intentional. That is the difference. Because the right way to release a hug is clean, smooth, and decisive, like a man who knows exactly what he's doing without overthinking it. You release without tension in your arms, without confusion in your body language, without second guessing in your mind. And that silent clarity communicates something powerful. That moment was enough, and I'm good. And that energy lands deeper than any words ever could. Because in female psychology, certainty feels safe, certainty feels attractive, certainty creates curiosity. Now, here's where it becomes one of those subtle psychology tricks most men never learn. When you end the hug cleanly, you leave emotional space behind. And space is where attraction grows. Space is where she starts to feel something missing, something she wants again. And that is how to fall in love begins. In small, almost invisible moments like this, not from force, not from overdoing, but from restraint and timing. So don't try to squeeze every ounce out of the hug. Don't think, if I hold longer, she'll feel more, because it works the opposite way. Attraction doesn't grow from holding on too long. It grows from knowing when to let go, from trusting that what you created was enough. And that confidence, quiet, grounded, unspoken, is what stays with her long after the hug ends. Be smooth when you pull away. Not abrupt, not hesitant, just natural, like the movement was always meant to happen. Keep your posture steady, your energy calm, your presence intact. Don't immediately fidget. Don't look around nervously. Don't break the frame you just built, because the release is not the end. It's the final note of the experience, and in many ways, it's the note she remembers most. Think of it like music. The last note determines how the entire song feels, and when you master this, when your release is clean and composed, it creates a quiet tension, a subtle pull, something she can't quite explain but definitely feels. And this is where psychology tricks, female psychology, and how to fall in love all intersect in a real, practical way. Not in theory, not in complicated tactics, but in simple, controlled actions done with awareness. You must understand this. Attraction is not about doing more, it's about doing things right and then knowing when to stop. That is power. That is presence. That is the kind of energy that separates a man who is trying from a man who is chosen. So the next time you hug her, don't just think about how you start. Don't just focus on the middle, focus on the exit. Own it. Be clean. Be decisive. Be calm. And walk away from that moment like it served its purpose. Because when you do that, you don't chase the feeling, you leave it behind for her to chase. And that is where the real shift happens. That is where she begins to lean in, to think about you, to feel drawn without knowing why. And that is the quiet, undeniable effect of mastering something as simple, yet as powerful as the clean release. Fifth, the anchor touch. Most men completely miss this, and it costs them more than they realize. A hug is never just a hug. It is a message. It is a signal. It is a moment where your body speaks before your words ever get the chance. And if you understand even a little bit of female psychology, you'll see why this matters. First, the anchor touch. This is where everything begins. Most men rush it, keep it light, keep it polite, and walk away thinking they did the right thing. Don't do that. Be intentional. When you pull her in, place one hand firmly between her shoulder blades. Not randomly, not softly, not like you're unsure of yourself. Right there, steady, grounded. That is the difference. Because that exact spot carries tension, stress from her day, pressure from life, emotions she doesn't always express. When your hand lands there with calm confidence, her nervous system responds instantly. She may not understand it consciously, but something inside her settles. That is female psychology at work. Her body reads you before her mind does, and in that moment, you are either safe or forgettable. Be the man who feels like calm in a storm. Don't squeeze too hard. Don't hover. Hold with purpose. That is what creates presence, and presence is what makes her remember you. This is not about manipulation. This is about awareness. Real psychology tricks are not about games. They are about understanding human nature and respecting it. When you master that, everything changes. You must also control your energy. A hug is not just physical contact, it is emotional transfer. If you are tense, rushed, distracted, she will feel it. If you are grounded, calm, and centered, she will feel that too. And guess which one makes her lean in without even realizing it? Exactly. That is how to fall in love without saying a word. You create a feeling she wants to return to. And here's the truth most men ignore. Women don't remember what you said nearly as much as they remember how you made them feel. So don't overthink your words. Refine your presence. Be slow. Be deliberate. Don't rush the hug like it's a formality. Let it breathe for a second longer than expected. Not awkwardly long, just enough to let the moment register. That is where emotional memory is built. That is where attraction quietly grows. And here's another layer. Your intention must be clean. If your mind is chaotic, needy, or seeking validation, she will sense it. Female psychology is incredibly sharp when it comes to emotional detection. You cannot fake grounded confidence. You become it. That is why this isn't just about a technique. It's about who you are when you do it. Be present. Be steady. Be a man who is comfortable in his own skin. Don't chase reactions. Don't look for approval. Give the moment, then let it go. That is power, and that is rare. Most men either hold back too much or try too hard. Both feel off. The balance is simple, but not easy. Calm strength. When she feels that through something as simple as a hug, it leaves a mark. Not a dramatic one, not something she can explain to her friends, but something quiet, something that makes her think there's something different about him. That is the beginning. That is how attraction often starts, subtle, unspoken, but deeply felt. And when you understand how to fall in love from a psychological perspective, you realize it's never about grand gestures. It's about small, consistent signals that build trust and comfort over time. This one move, the anchor touch, is one of those signals. Use it wisely. Don't overuse it. Don't make it mechanical. Feel the moment. Adjust to the situation. Respect her space. But when the moment is right, don't hesitate, because hesitation breaks the flow. Confidence carries it forward. And remember this, the goal is not to impress. The goal is to connect. Impressing is loud. Connection is quiet. One fades quickly, the other lingers. So next time you hug her, don't just go through the motions. Be aware. Be intentional. Let your presence speak. because in that brief moment, you are telling her everything she needs to know without saying a single word. Sixth, this one is low key, the most underrated thing in attraction, the slow exhale. Listen carefully because this is where most men completely miss the point, and yet this is where the real power lives. The slow exhale, the quiet breath, the invisible signal that speaks louder than any words you could ever say. As Marcus Aurelius once reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And in this moment, your breath is that power, your control, your silent authority. When you hold her, don't rush, don't tense up, don't fill the space with nervous energy. Be still, be grounded, and then take one deep, slow, controlled breath out. Because that single action is not just physical, it is psychological, it is emotional, it is deeply rooted in old Stoic wisdom that teaches mastery over self before mastery over anything else. Understand this: her body is reading you, not your words, not your intentions, but your state. And when your breathing slows, when your chest softens, when your presence becomes steady, her nervous system begins to mirror yours. This is not theory, this is biology. This is how human beings connect at the deepest level. You must realize that attraction is not built in loud moments. It is built in subtle ones, in silence, in stillness, in control. And this is exactly where Stoicism win becomes real in your life, not in what you say, but in how you exist in that moment. When you exhale slowly, you are telling her without speaking, I am calm, I am here, there is nothing to prove. And that is rare. That is powerful. That is what creates an iron mind. In today's world, where everything is fast, reactive, and distracted, a man who can slow down his breath becomes a man who stands out without trying, a man who doesn't chase attention, but naturally attracts it. You've heard women say, he just makes me feel calm, safe. I don't even know why. And that confusion she feels is exactly your advantage, because what she's responding to is not logic, it's alignment. It's her body syncing with yours. It's her dropping her guard without realizing it. Don't underestimate this. Don't rush past this. This is where connection begins. Relaxation leads to trust. Trust builds emotional safety. Emotional safety creates desire. And desire, real desire, is never forced. It grows quietly, steadily, naturally. You must be the man who controls the pace, who controls himself, who understands that the strongest presence is not loud, it is steady, it is grounded, it is certain. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. And in this case, be the man who brings calm into chaos, who brings stillness into movement, who brings certainty into uncertainty. That is Stoicism win in action. That is old Stoic wisdom applied to modern attraction. When you breathe slowly, you are not just calming her. You are demonstrating discipline, control, and awareness, the traits of an iron mind, the traits of a man who leads without needing to dominate, who attracts without needing to chase. And here is your instruction. Don't rush the hug. Don't treat it as a formality. Don't break the moment too soon. Stay, breathe, feel the stillness. Let her feel it too. Because when she relaxes in your arms, something shifts, something opens, something connects. And that connection is what every man is searching for, but very few understand how to create. This is not about tricks. This is not about manipulation. This is about mastery. Mastery of self, mastery of presence, mastery of energy. You must train this. You must practice this. Because once you do, you stop trying to impress and you start allowing attraction to happen naturally, effortlessly, powerfully. And remember this clearly: a man who controls his breath controls his state. And a man who controls his state controls the experience of everyone around him. That is your edge. That is your power. That is your path to becoming the man who doesn't need to chase connection, because connection comes to him. If you made it this far, you're already separating yourself from the crowd, because most men rush, most men tense up, most men miss the moment completely. But you're learning control, you're learning presence, you're learning how to lead without saying a word. Remember this. Attraction doesn't start with what you say, it starts with how she feels in your arms. Slow down, breathe out, stay grounded. That's where the real connection begins. Now take action. Don't just watch, apply it. The next time you hold her, be the calm she can't explain, the presence she doesn't forget. Comment this below to lock it in. I create calm, I create connection, I create desire. Seventh, this silent confidence. Not every moment needs words. In fact, the strongest moments rarely have any. That is where most men get it wrong. They think connection lives in clever lines, in jokes, in constant talking. It doesn't. Real connection lives in presence. So when you hug her, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't try to impress. Don't break the moment just because it feels unfamiliar. Be still. Let it exist. Because in that silence, something deeper happens. She begins to feel you. Not your words, not your performance, you. And that is rare. That is what separates a high-value man from the rest. Most men talk because they are uncomfortable. They speak to cover the tension, to hide their nervous energy, to escape the vulnerability of simply being there. But you must not do that. You must stay. You must hold the moment without trying to control it. That is masculine energy at its core. Calm, grounded, unshaken. Understand this clearly. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is communication. When you are quiet and fully present, your body speaks louder than any sentence ever could. Your breathing slows. Your grip becomes steady. Your energy becomes consistent. And she picks up on that instantly. Women are highly attuned to emotional signals. They feel what is beneath the surface. So if your silence is tense, she feels it. If your silence is calm, she melts into it. That is why you must train yourself to be comfortable in stillness. Don't fidget. Don't adjust unnecessarily. Don't look for an escape. Stay rooted. Stay there as if you belong in that moment, because you do. A high-value man doesn't chase noise. He creates space. And in that space, attraction grows naturally. When you stop trying to do something, you allow something real to happen. Think about it. When was the last time you truly felt someone's presence without distraction? It's rare. That's why it's powerful. That's why it helps you attract women without forcing anything. Because instead of trying to win her over, you're giving her something she doesn't often experience: peace. And peace is magnetic. Don't underestimate how much strength it takes to stay silent. Anyone can talk. Anyone can fill a moment with empty words. But not everyone can hold eye contact, stay calm, and say nothing while still making the moment feel full. That is discipline. That is control. That is masculine energy expressed in the most subtle yet powerful way. You must practice this. You must become the man who is not afraid of silence because you understand its value. There's a quiet message you send when you embrace that silence. You're saying, without speaking, I am enough as I am. I don't need to perform. I don't need to impress. I am present, and that is enough. And that message lands deeper than any compliment or joke ever could. It builds trust. It builds intrigue. It creates a sense of safety that words alone cannot achieve. And when she feels safe, she opens up. When she opens up, the connection deepens. That is how a high-value man builds attraction, without forcing it, without chasing it, simply by being grounded in who he is. Most men never reach this level because they're addicted to doing. They think they must always act, always say something, always lead with visible effort. But real leadership in moments like this is invisible. It's emotional steadiness. It's the ability to guide the moment without words. So when you hug her, don't rush it. Don't treat it like a quick formality. Let the moment breathe. Let the silence stretch just enough to create tension, but not discomfort. That balance is where the magic happens. Be aware of your internal state. If your mind is racing, she will feel it. If you're calm, she will sync with that calm. That's how human connection works. Energy transfers. So before you even touch her, center yourself. Slow down, breathe. Bring your attention into the present moment. Then, when you hold her, you're not just physically there, you're fully there. That is what makes the difference. That is what allows you to attract women without saying a word. Don't confuse silence with distance. Silence is not about pulling away. It's about being deeply connected without needing to speak. It's about letting your presence do the work. That is why you must stay engaged. Feel the moment. Notice the subtle shifts, her breathing, her body relaxing, the way she leans into you. These are signals. These are responses to your energy. And when you see them, don't interrupt. Don't break the flow. Stay with it. Let it deepen. A man who understands silence understands power, not loud power, not aggressive power, quiet power, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't seek approval, the kind that simply exists and influences everything around it. That is the kind of masculine energy that stands out immediately because it's rare, because it's real. So the next time you hug her, remember this. Don't talk just to fill the space. Don't move just to ease your own discomfort. Be still, be calm, be present. Let the silence speak for you. That is where your strength shows. That is where attraction grows. And that is how a high-value man creates moments that stay with her long after the hug ends. Eighth, the silent confidence. This is where most men lose the moment without even realizing it, and it has nothing to do with looks, status, or clever words. It comes down to awareness. It comes down to control, not over her, but over yourself. Too many men go wrong in two predictable ways. They either hold too tight, as if gripping harder will somehow create connection, or they go too loose, as if they're unsure whether they even deserve to be there. Don't do that. Don't squeeze like you're trying to prove something. Don't hover like you're asking for permission. Be intentional. Be grounded. The right grip is firm yet relaxed. It is steady yet effortless. It communicates something deeper than attraction. It communicates emotional certainty. And in female psychology, certainty is magnetic. That is one of those subtle psychology tricks that separates the man she forgets from the man she feels. Think about it. When your arms are too tight, her body reads tension, not safety. Not warmth, tension. And tension creates distance, even in close proximity. On the other hand, when your hold is too loose, her body reads hesitation. It feels like you're unsure, like you might pull away at any second. That uncertainty breaks the moment. But when you find that balance, when your grip is calm, natural, and unforced, you send a completely different signal. You tell her, without saying a word, I am here, I am present, I don't need to prove anything. And that is powerful. That is how to fall in love without chasing it, without forcing it, without overthinking every move. You must understand this. Women don't respond to pressure. They respond to presence. That is not a line. That is a principle rooted deep in female psychology. Presence means your body is calm. Your mind is not racing. Your energy is not trying to take something. It is simply there, steady and grounded. And when your grip reflects that, when it feels like a space instead of a trap, something shifts inside her. She relaxes. She softens. She leans in, not because you pulled her closer, but because she feels safe enough to come closer on her own. That is the difference. That is the line most men never see. Be aware of your hands. Be aware of your arms. They are speaking long before your mouth ever does. A relaxed grip says, I choose this moment. It does not say, I need this moment. And that distinction is everything. Neediness repels. Choice attracts. One creates pressure, the other creates curiosity. These are the quiet psychology tricks that operate beneath the surface, the ones most men ignore because they seem too simple. But simple does not mean insignificant. In fact, simplicity is often where the deepest power lives. Don't rush the hug. Don't over-adjust. Don't fidget. Let your arms settle naturally. Let the moment breathe. That is how to fall in love, not by forcing intensity, but by allowing connection to unfold without resistance. When your grip is relaxed, your entire body follows. Your breathing slows. Your posture stabilizes. Your energy becomes consistent. And consistency builds trust, even in seconds. That is how female psychology works. It is not about grand gestures. It is about subtle signals repeated with authenticity. And here's what most men miss. She is not analyzing your grip logically. She is feeling it emotionally. Her body is reading your energy faster than her mind can explain it. So if your grip carries tension, she feels it. If it carries doubt, she feels that too. But if it carries calm confidence, real, grounded calm, she feels that as well. And she responds to it, not consciously, naturally, instinctively. That is why these psychology tricks are so effective. They work beneath the surface, where attraction actually lives. Be the man whose touch feels like calm, not chaos. Be the man whose presence feels like clarity, not confusion. That is how to fall in love in a way that lasts, not through force, not through pressure, but through emotional steadiness. Your grip is not just physical, it is a reflection of your internal state. If you are centered, your touch will be centered. If you are at ease, your touch will carry ease. And that is what draws her in. So the next time you hold her, remember this. Don't try to impress. Don't try to control. Don't try to calculate every move. Just be there, fully, calmly, with a grip that says, I'm here because I want to be. That is enough, more than enough. Because in the world of female psychology, the man who brings peace into the moment will always stand out from the man who brings pressure. And when she feels that difference, even for a second, she won't forget it. All right, before you go, let's bring this home the right way. Hey, I appreciate you being here. If you made it this far, it means you're not just watching. You're learning, you're sharpening yourself, and that already puts you ahead of most men. Now listen carefully. This isn't about tricks. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about presence. It's about control. It's about knowing how to make a moment feel real. When you move with calm confidence, when your touch is steady, when your energy is grounded, you don't need to chase anything. She feels it. And when she feels it, everything changes. So here's my advice to you. Keep it simple, but take it seriously. Don't rush. Don't overthink. Be the man who is comfortable in his own body. Be the man who creates a moment instead of begging for one. That is what sets you apart. And remember this, attraction isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right things the right way with the right energy. If this spoke to you, stay with me. There's a lot more you haven't been told yet.